Council, we are ready to reconvene.
Okay, thank you. We will open now with public comment.
Mayor, there needs to be a motion to reconvene.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Do we have a motion to reconvene?
I move to reconvene in a public meeting.
Support.
It's been moved and second. Now, is this a voice vote?
Voice vote, yes, Mayor.
All in favor? Say aye, please.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. All right, we will start with public comment. And we add public comment is allowed for each person 3 minutes. We ask that you would be courteous and respectful, and we in turn will be the same with you. So do we have a list? Okay, thank you. Okay, first on the list is Mr. Rajavi.
Start the time. Good evening, my name is Reza Rajavi. I'm the owner of 110 and 114 North Summit. I have paid the city of Ypsilanti more than $50,000 in property taxes in 5 years. In other words, I have spent all of my social security on prior paying the taxes. The city has constantly refused to issue me certificate of occupancy. Nearly a couple of decades ago, the city sent me a blank application to let them know about the status of my property at 114 North Summit. I filled it out and received a certificate of occupancy as 3/2, meaning 3 efficiencies and 2 rooms. The city claims that the city was supposed to be a duplex. As a duplex, the building would have 3 bedrooms upstairs and 3 bedrooms downstairs. Before leaving the United States in 2010 for a long trip, I went to the city and said to the inspector that I don't want the city to inspect my properties until further notice. When I came back and I noticed that the city had taken my daughter to court for living in our house because the city considered her to be a tenant. The court cost was $700 and they did not issue the certificate of occupancy unless that $700 is paid. The city insists on the idea that properties without a certificate of occupancy cannot be rented. And yet the certificate of occupancy for my property was not issued until nearly 2 months after it was inspected. When I inquired about it, Mr. Daniel said that they're short-handed and the office needs at least 1.5 to 2 administrative assistants. I think it was the year 2017 or 2018 that I decided to apply for variance to change the occupancy of 114 North Summit back to 3/2. I went to the city and talked to Mr. Myers about it, and now the secretary told me that he was not in, but told me which office to go to. I went to that office, picked up the application, paid $400, and I started the project. When I finished the project, I went to 114 North Summit and asked for an appointment to go before the Zoning Board of Appeals, and that was when the city dropped a bombshell on me. They told me that in order to have that property as a 5 unit, I also should have a separate water line to the building, and that was not on the application, people. The application that I filled out said nothing about a separate. That is not fair to me. For 6 years, I have spent all of my social security on taxes. That is not fair to me. I need some money to live on. I need some money to have my electric, gas, and water bill paid.
Thank you, Mr. Rajavi.
Thank you for what? Every time I come here, all I get is thank you. Thank you, thank you. Thank you for what? Thank you is not going to pay my electric bill. It's not going to pay my gas bill. It's not going to pay my water bill. Mr. Richardson, how many times have I come here? Now you tell me. How many times?
I understand that, Mr. Rajavi, and I did give you a referral. I don't know if you were able to follow through with the referral that I gave you or not.
I already did. He told me there is nothing that we can do. It's not pertaining to him. He said there is nothing that we can do. He said if there's a bad roof on your house, I'll fix it for you. You sent me an email in response to my email. And what was the email? You said love. Miss Richardson, love cannot pay my electric bill. Come to my house right now. It's 33 degrees. 33 degrees. This is how I go to bed. All I'm asking you to do is just give me a certificate of occupancy for 3 units.
Okay, Mr. Rajavi, I've got this, please, thank you. Mr. Rajavi, I will speak with you at another time.
I have spoken with you 1 million times. You did not do anything for me as a representative, and you're a mayor right now, and still you haven't done anything for me.
And Mr. Rajavi, I gave you the referrals that I could. Okay, thank you. Miss Del Ria Burge, did I say that right?
That's right. It's Del Rey.
Del Rey.
Yep.
Okay.
That's all right. Hi, so I'm up for nomination for the HDC, so I just want to introduce myself real quick and just kind of tell you a little bit about me. So I worked in Indian Village on a house for several years, over 100 years old, and then moved to Ypsilanti to actually restore and help preserve the Greek Revival Ballard Breaky home on 125 North Huron. I learned a great deal by working with various skilled tradesmen in Detroit to bring my vision to life, restoring both the interior and exterior of the original grandeur. As a resident and small business owner of Ypsilanti, I specialize in antique and historical items and am dedicated to preserving our city's rich history. My work history demonstrates my genuine passion for historical preservation and restoration, and I believe that my knowledge and experience could be a great value to this committee and our community. I served as communication chair and corresponding secretary to the Indian Village Women's Garden Club Board for several years, and was also on both the historical home and garden tour, as well as the historical holiday home tour committee. I have select board experience with the Ballard Breaky Association, as well as several association boards in Ann Arbor and Sanibel Island, Florida. I strongly believe in the importance of historical district designation and would give my all to facilitate communication between historic home and business owners and the HDC. Oftentimes, I think people don't know what they don't know, and I would love to work together with them in an open and precise manner with our community so that we can prevent less headaches and issues before construction even starts. So yeah, thank you so much for your time. And yeah, that's it.
And thank you, Ms. Burge. Yes. And we have Andy French. Oh, there you are.
Hello, Mayor and Council. My name is Andy French, and I am with Aubrey's, and I am here because I am up for reappointment to the DDA. And I just want to let you know how much I have enjoyed my work with the DDA. I enjoy the leadership that I've worked with. I think we've gotten a lot accomplished over the few years I've been on the, excuse me, these massive. I think we've gotten a lot accomplished over the few years I've been on the board. I have served as the chair of the Operations and Finance Committee. I am currently the vice chair of the DDA board. And I think we do a very nice job serving the small businesses and encouraging development in our downtowns. And I would just ask for my reappointment as well as the others that are up in front of council. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Mr. French, for coming out. Is there anyone else that would like to speak? Yes, would you please step to the mic and give us your name?
Hi, I'm Melissa Gillette. I'm the owner of Betty Green Salon at 25 North Washington Street. I am also up for an appointment at the DDA. And I spoke last time at the Freight House, but it was a little hard to hear. But I've been a resident of Ypsilanti. I was here from 2008 until 2018. And unfortunately I had to move out of the city. But I've been a business owner since 2015 in downtown Ypsilanti. And I just want to let you know how passionate I am about the city and about the business districts that we have, and how much I look forward to working on the DDA and being able to help uplift other businesses in the area. I've been very lucky to be so successful We won a Best of Washtenaw Award last year, which I'm really proud of. And we do everything we can to help uplift everyone around us. And I feel like I could do that really well from the DDA board. So thank you so much for putting me back up. And I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. And where did you say your business was? On Washington Street?
Yeah, I'm at 25 North Washington
25
Street.
North
Yeah, right
Washington.
across the street from Lot G.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak to council? Yes, please step and give us your name.
Hi, my name is James Huffman. I'm also up for nomination to the Historic District Commission. So just would like to introduce myself. I lived here for a few years. I've worked in the area in a variety of ways. I worked for YCWA. I worked for Habitat for Humanity here in the Huron Valley. I own and operate a small building company. So I have 4 carpenters that I work with, and we renovate mostly and do additions.
Could you speak more into the mic?
Yeah, hi.
Thank you.
Sorry. So I'm a licensed builder, and I've worked in building and renovation for 17 years now. So I was interested in being on the Historic District Commission and the work that's happening there.
Okay,
That's all. Thank you.
thank you. Anyone else?
Council, there are 2 individuals participating virtually that have their hand raised. The first being Sally Lusk. I'll allow them to speak. And
Thank you.
you'll have 3 minutes to address council.
Sally, you can speak.
I have a question as to whether I should speak now or at the time on the agenda for the PUD, which is the topic.
You should speak during that first reading.
Thank you.
The next individual in the attendees list with their hand raised is John Lusk. I'll allow them to speak now.
I'm sorry, I too wanted to speak to the PUD and didn't realize it was separate from public comment. So if I'll pass for now and speak later. Thank you.
Thank you.
Council, that is the only members of the attendees list virtually that had their hand raised. If council wishes, it can move forward to the next section.
Okay. Thank you, Seeing that there are no other hands for public comment, we will move on to our presentations. And we welcome the ride.
I take it it's that one right there. City. Yes.
Go ahead. I am Jesse Miller. Good evening, council members, Mayor Richardson.
Good
It's
evening.
my pleasure and my honor to be here once again before you as the Ypsilanti City appointed member of the Board of Directors of the Ann Arbor Area Transportation Authority. As a little aside, this past fall, I was elected board secretary by my fellow board members, meaning I now serve on the governance committee. It's kind of the vice chair position on our board, which means I now serve on the governance committee and must co-sign on all resolutions passed by our body. And I'm here today to help introduce what could be one of the most impactful questions we've addressed since I first joined the board nearly 4 years ago. I also want to acknowledge my fellow board members in attendance. We have Kathleen Mozak here in person and Susan Polly attending virtually. Now, I first joined the board first and foremost because I am a transit rider. I rely on the bus every day to get to and from work. I use the bus to do a significant portion of my grocery shopping. I go to the pharmacy, the library, I take my kids to the hands-on museum. I'm on the board because I know how the development of a transit system improves access and equity for the community. And I know that this board is also aware of that. Last summer, you approved an update to the non-motorized transportation plan that included an incredibly ambitious objective of increasing the proportion of residents who take public transit to work to 20%. And our partner municipalities in Ann Arbor and Ypsilanti Township have very similar statements in their own planning documents. Now, last month, in accordance or in line with council's goals as well as those from our partners, the RIDE staff put forward a proposal for what would represent the largest expansion of service in a decade and a significant first step towards achieving those goals. It's now up to us on the board to assess the proposal, adjust it if necessary, and then decide whether or not to put it on before voters this fall. And although the RIDE staff developed this proposal in line with the master plan, as well as the results of our workshops with you last year and dozens of public input sessions and surveys of riders, it's vital that we seek your feedback at this crucial moment. And I just want to thank you, say how much I appreciate you taking the time to listen to us today, and I eagerly await your input. And I'm gonna hand things off now to Matthew Carpenter, CEO of the RIDE, to give you all the details.
Hello, Mr. Carpenter.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you, Jesse, for a wonderful introduction. With Mr. Hellinga's assistance, I'm going to move forward into the technical elements of our proposal this evening, our presentation. Our intent here this evening, actually, we can go back one slide. Our intent this evening is to introduce you to some of the proposals. We have two that we've rolled out recently. I want to introduce them to you, walk you through them, and begin to get your initial feedback. Specifically, I want to speak about our long-range plan, our 2022 service millage proposal that Jesse was just speaking about, our timelines and next steps, then open it up for your questions and comments. Thank you. So, sort of key points as we go through here. As Jesse was mentioning, we've been doing a lot of public involvement over since 2019. We're hearing very consistently from residents and institutions in this area a desire for more public transit, usually for the benefit of seniors, persons with disabilities, persons on low income, but really everyone in the community, regardless of station or walk of life. The RIDE is in a position to deliver improved and increased services. We're also in a position to leverage additional funding from the state and federal government, but we do need additional local property tax resources to be able to move forward on this. These services and the property tax implications are really outlined in two documents I'm going to introduce you to this evening, our long-range plan and our 2022 millage proposal. Let's move forward. Thank you. So our long-range plan, what is the long-range plan? It is a 25-year blueprint for the future of public transit in the Ypsilanti Ann Arbor area. Why a 25-year plan? A lot of the services and infrastructure that we work on take years, if not decades, to plan, fund, and implement. So we really need to have a longer-term blueprint so that we can keep our eyes on the prize as we move forward year over year. It's been in development for some time, and a lot of public involvement has gone into it. I want to explain the relationship between a long-range plan and 2022 millage proposal. And oddly, the best visual I can give you for this are these nested colorful bowls. Because really the millage sits inside the long-range plan. As we've been speaking with you, with members of the public, with the other municipal councils in the area for the last few years about the long-range plan, we've also effectively been talking about the millage because a number of short-term improvements have come together and begun to sort of coalesce in the long-term plan. These are really the first things that should come out of the gate. That is what comprises the short-term millage proposal. And I think it's important to understand that by law, the RIDE can only go out for 5-year millages. So if we have a 25-year plan, that is in effect five-year millages in a row. And that's important because we sort of see us moving from one stage to another over time. But it's also important because it gives the riders, or excuse me, it gives the voters and the riders an opportunity to sort of gut check us. Are they happy with the progress? Are we going too fast, too slow? at the voting booth, they will have the ultimate say on the progress of this plan. And someone asked me recently, what if they want you to slow down? Well, then a 25-year plan can become a 30-year plan. We need to be responsive and understanding of the will of the voters. So this 2022 millage that I'll walk you through in a few moments is really just the first implementation, the jumpstart of you, if you will, of the long range plan. Both of these items are on our website. They're in draft form. They have not been finalized, as Jesse just said. We are eagerly seeking input from you this evening, from members of the public over the next few weeks to help us make these even better. Next slide, please. I think a good question, where do the goals for this sort of an exercise come from? As Jesse mentioned, we really look to the values and published policy documents from the city of Ypsilanti, the city of Ann Arbor, Ypsilanti Township, to help give us guidance. What are the values? What are the priorities in our various communities? We also derive them from speaking with elected officials, members of the public. But it might be a surprise, and you may not believe it when I tell you that when you talk in a community of about 200,000 people with at least 3 different municipalities, that not every priority meshes perfectly on the first go. The ride can't go in 3 different directions. We can only go in one direction. So it really falls to our board of directors, including Mr. Miller and Ms. Moses-Best and Ms. Pollack, to set that direction for us, to turn all of those different ideas into a single set of marching orders that they give to me. So what you see here is a good example of the types of documents that we look to and the directions our board has given us to translate into the plan and the millage, to increase social equity by improving access to jobs, education, and housing, among other destinations, to help the environment, reduce air pollution, and to help workers and businesses, primarily through labor mobility, helping people overcome barriers caused by transportation access. Thank you. Next slide. We also, as Jesse mentioned, look heavily to the public to help guide us in the development of these proposals. We've done a lot of work over the last few years, including just this last fall, talking to, I think, 1,400 people through various meetings, online surveys, and a variety of other ways. That really helps us make sure that we are reflecting the will of the combined communities, and all 3 of them at least. And I want to take just a moment to speak about the important feedback we got from the community last fall when we came, I believe, here as well, to present 4 scenarios, a range of options that a community could choose from. We presented 4 ideas. One of them was essentially a do-nothing option, no tax increase, but no service improvements. And then we gave you 3 options that represented an increasing amount of transit service and cost. We were very clear last fall that there is a price tag for all of these things. We attached mill rates to all of these scenarios and then asked people, what would you like? Next slide, please. We can see the results of that. I'll be honest, I was a little surprised at how dominant and strong the message is that we were getting from the general public. And it's very heavily towards an ambitious agenda for public transit. Transformative change is a word that came up several times. This is consistent not only with people who voluntarily come to our meetings and participate in our polls, but also with the random scientifically valid telephone surveying that we've done. We're getting very consistent messages across the community that they do want us to be ambitious and provide more services. Next slide, please. So all of this context and long range material leads into the short-term 5-year proposal that's on the table now. I'd like to take a few moments and walk you through the details of it. What would this proposal accomplish? First of all, it would maintain all existing public transit services in the city of Ypsi Township, Ann Arbor. It does have options that our board can consider for limited expansion. As Jesse said, the biggest version of this is a very large extension. It's aligned with the goals of the community, including those here, and it maximizes outside state and federal funding. That's an important point I want to speak about for just a moment. Not everyone realizes that a transit authority like the RIDE actually generates revenue for our community. We don't think about it that way, but every dollar of local property taxes that comes to a transit authority like us allows us to leverage another $1.40 in federal and state funding. So for every buck we put in, we get $2.40 to spend. That's a really good deal. And it's up to us to make sure that that is distributed and shared evenly, sometimes disproportionately, as we're going to see to certain areas of our communities that really do need it the most. So that's an important element that will come to. Now, in this proposal, there are 10 separate elements. I'll walk you through in a moment. Try to make it a little easier. We've grouped them into 2 categories. Elements necessary just to maintain the existing services we have, and elements that could be chosen by our board for limited service expansion. These are options that the board is considering. Next slide, please. So this first category of service of proposals really focused on maintaining the existing public transit services. It includes the renewal of our existing 0.7 mil property tax levy. It also unfortunately must include some additional funding to help offset the structural deficit we've been struggling with at the ride for several years. As everything must these days, it includes an allowance for inflation, unfortunately, and some additional staffing, excuse us, to help us continue to provide services in the community. Next slide, please. A lot of the interesting stuff happens in the service enhancement options. There are 6 elements here. I would like to walk you through each of them briefly. Next slide, please. The first is a downtown to downtown Ypsilanti to Ann Arbor Express bus service. The important thing here is to get from the Ypsilanti Transit Center to the Ann Arbor Transit Center is a 45-minute bus trip on Route 4. We can cut 15 minutes off of that. Doesn't sound like a lot. 15 minutes each way, half an hour a day. It's 2.5 hours a week. It's 10 hours a month. It's actually 120 hours a year. Do the math. I had to do it a couple times just to be sure. 120 hours a year that you don't have to be commuting. That is a huge and immediate benefit and effectively brings our communities closer together. So this is a exciting opportunity here. Next one, please. Longer hours of service operation system-wide, exactly what it sounds like. We'll start the buses earlier, run them later. This would cover all of the routes in the entire network, including those in the city of Ann Arbor. Next slide. Similarly, increasing the frequency of service during weekends. So going from a bus every 60 minutes to a bus every 30 minutes. We like to say that frequency equals freedom because it really has the ability for people to make trips on the fly. Flexibility and independence that comes with frequency is very important. So this one again is system-wide, would apply equally, including to all the routes in the city of Ypsilanti. Next slide, please. This is one I think is very important because it speaks to our commitment to social equity. We have had an overnight transit service in the city of Ann Arbor and some of the city of Ypsilanti now for many years. It's called Night Ride. But that service does not cover all of the city of Ypsilanti or most of Ypsilanti Township. You can see the existing area in red here. We are proposing to expand this night ride service to cover all of the city of Ypsilanti and much of Ypsilanti Township. The map behind here is the county's opportunity index. We wanted to show the impact that this can have from an equity perspective. This is especially important for people working irregular hours. Folks who maybe their job takes them to 1 a.m. or 2 a.m. or maybe it's the swing shift, So this is a massive expansion of this particular element of our service, and it's really bringing it into line with what we've provided in other parts of our area for some time. Next slide, please. Customer service agents at the Ypsilanti Transit Center. Jesse feels very strongly about this one. For many years, we have had living, breathing staff people at the bus terminal in Ann Arbor. We do have a booth at the Ypsilanti Transit Center today, but all the time I've been here, we have not had our own staff in there answering questions, selling fares, helping people plan their trips. We want to change that. And so this element is simply to put staff in that building during regular weekdays and make it equivalent to what we do in Ann Arbor. Next slide. Finally, the 10th and final element of this millage proposal is it's a capital fund. You could think of it as a sinking fund, although we don't use that term. It's a set aside to help us build up a bit of a nest egg so that we can begin to be competitive for large capital projects. The United States federal government will, if you bring some local money to the table, they will match that up to 50%. And that's great, but some of the projects we're talking about are very large and very expensive. The construction of the new Ypsilanti Transit Center, we expect is a $16 million project. We're going to be able to pay the planning. Thank you, Senator Gary Peters, for an earmark to help us do that. But ultimately, we're going to have to come up with probably around 7 million local dollars to match a 50% federal contribution. We won't even get out of the gate without that. So this helps us build up a nest egg so that we can approach that project and others. Next slide, please. In your material and on our website are all the details of our proposal. This table, I think I want to speak to for a moment because it really tries to, in a really quant kind of way, boil down these various 10 elements to their core financial issues. You see here the gross costs for each element, the net mill rate, and cumulative mill rate. You also see the start date. I do want to be clear, the way the millage timing works. If we win an election in 2022, the money would not arrive until July of 24. No, but then the services would start in August of 24. So as soon as we get it in our hands, we begin to put these services on the street with immediate implementation. There has been some confusion in the public about the long-range plan where you don't see some elements being deployed until 2030, and this proposal where things are very immediate and quick. Thank you. Next slide. Rounding third here, we're almost done. Our proposal also suggests to our board that we should be looking at a ballot measure for August of 2022. This is because 2023 would make a good fallback year. In case we're not successful with the voters, we'll need to recalibrate, go back up. And the November ballot in the general election is looking very crowded. We have the governor's race, control of the United States House, and possibly as many as 12 statewide ballot initiatives dealing with some very acrimonious issues. That's going to be very hard on November ballot for a small local ballot measure to cut through the noise and be able to educate voters. So we're suggesting to our board that August will be easier so that voters can focus on our stuff, beat us up, learn what we need to learn about it so they can make that decision. Next slide. Next steps, our public feedback for all of this information is open today. We're here tonight to hear your feedback. Our board received this information, initial proposal on March 17th, had a robust discussion. I will share with you that they are wrestling with the trade-offs here. The mill rate increase, in case you didn't see it on the table, went fast, 2.38. When you roll all of this together, it's not a small price tag. We are very conscious of that. We're approaching that gingerly. The board is wrestling with the costs and the benefits. What do we want? What do we, nice to haves, must haves? They're all struggling with that. I just came this evening from Ypsilanti Township where I made a similar presentation. So the whole community is having some input on this. Anyway, April 21st is our next board meeting. That is the first time our board may reach a decision on what the mill rate and ballot language would be. So that's our timeline. Next slide. In closing, I just want to reiterate, we have heard very consistently a desire in our communities for more transit. I do want to be clear, it's not uniform. We are hearing a vocal minority concerned about tax rates. It's a legitimate concern and what our board is wrestling with. But there is the overwhelming majority of sentiment we're hearing for an ambitious expansion of public transit. Really to achieve the benefits for seniors, for persons with disabilities, and for everyone who wants to travel free of a car. The RIDE is in a position to deliver these services and to leverage more outside funding, but we do need additional local property tax support to do that. Again, both of these things are wrapped up in our long-range plan and our 2022 millage, which fit together hand in glove. So with that, Madam Mayor, members of council, thank you for your time. Jesse and I are here to answer your questions and hear your feedback on these proposals. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Carpenter, for coming. Council, questions or discussion? Questions or comments or yes, Mr. Wilcox.
Start with a question. Can you address the particulars of the deficit reduction and how you've been addressing that for the past couple of years?
Yes, so you can see in your packet, I believe it's 8 of, oh, dear me, 2, 7, 4. There is an allowance deficit, 0.6 of a mil. So when we last expanded public transit services in 2014, there's no nice way to say that, we didn't calculate it correctly. And we did not take in enough revenue to continue to provide the services that we were putting out on the streets. We discovered this when new management arrived and there was a lot of change on our board in 2017. We made a decision at that time, staring down the barrel of our millage expiring. We needed to run a new millage in 2018. We made a tactical decision that frankly, we were going to eat it. Tighten our belt as hard as we can. So the 2018 millage election was a strict renewal at 0.7, which is what we had originally asked for in 14. And we've been sort of living with it ever since. We have unfortunately decreased office staff by, I think, about 9%. We've made a number of other changes throughout the organization to economize on various things. Generally trying to live within our means and frankly see if we can continue to deliver the promises that we made in that first millage election. It's become increasingly apparent that we can drag that out for a while, but not forever. So the deficit eventually captures us. We are projecting right now that revenues will not keep pace with costs as early as 2024. At that point, we would go into a deficit position. We may be able to do that for a little while, burn through our reserves. But once that's done, we would be in a position where financially we have no choice but to begin cutting services.
Kind of wanted to jump in. The very first conversation I had with Matt when I joined the board was about the deficit. It was literally the first meeting we had. And during my time on the board, they, with him and the CFO at the time, were very upfront about the deficit and how we at that point didn't really have our emergency fund. But over my course of my time at the board, that fund has been restored. And so there was nothing being hidden, and the agency is actually in a much stronger position than we were than when I first joined. I didn't know there was such a thing. Our budget presentations won awards in consecutive years. Unfortunately, that's then recruited to lead its own transit agency in Indiana. I can't remember which. Fort Wayne, maybe? I can't remember. Anyway, so yes, he's been very upfront the entire time and has done a lot of good work on this.
Maybe just to close that out, we have completely overhauled our internal financial processes and the board keeps a much closer eye on things now. So we're very confident the situation will not reemerge.
Along with this, is there any plan structure for increasing fees for service, or how does that work?
You mean fares
Yeah.
by passengers? Right now, there are no plans to increase fares. We tweaked them a little bit in this last budget cycle to actually reduce a couple of fares that proved to be more problematic than any of us anticipated. We have not really adjusted our fares in about 10 years prior to that, at least. And we see that as an equity issue, like keeping our services affordable. So I don't think there's any appetite on the board or on staff to really increase our fares.
That's great. Thank you.
Oh, yes, Ms. Somerville.
Sorry, the slide where it shows the opportunity index and what the route will, the plan will actually like emerge to, is it possible to get a copy of that? So I tried looking it up online, I looked at the.
No, that's only in this presentation. I would
Yeah.
just make it that
Okay.
clear, but maybe if you walk back, well, you can, Mr. Simon calling back from. I can certainly get you a copy.
Yeah, it would just be nice because I feel like looking at it from as far away as I am, I could tell, I mean, looking at the opportunity index and looking at where the routes would go, I think that would be important for me to be able to, my constituents about when they ask questions.
Slide 15. Essentially, the area we're proposing to expand Night Ride to is the entirety of the fixed route service area, in the greater Ypsilanti area. So we're trying to just parallel
Yeah.
where the fixed route. with that area.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, we thank you very much, both of you, for coming with the presentation tonight. And I'm sure that there will be discussion away from the table with one or two at a time. And we will get back with you, or you'll get back with us. Okay.
Thank
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for the work that you do. Okay, next is our ordinance, the first reading, and I believe, Mr. Wilcox, and we have that. No, you don't.
Maybe I do.
Well, you have it, you have it, Mr. Jones.
Yeah, 69.
Ordinance 1388.
Why is this?
Okay, you have it.
I have it.
You have it, okay, thank you. I knew it was on this here.
This is ordinance 1388, an ordinance to amend chapter 122, an ordinance entitled Plan Unit Development, Multiple Family Dwelling Use at 845 and 945 West Clark. And this is resolution number 2022-065. Resolved that that the Ypsilanti City Council adopt the ordinance entitled Lincoln Avenue Capital Management Plan Unit Development and approve the associated plan unit development agreement on first reading, and may the rest be read into the record. And I so move.
Support.
We're open for the public hearing, or do you have a presentation for us?
Yeah.
Come on, please.
So I can give a brief presentation for you here.
All right, thank you.
So this is a planned unit development. This is really, I want to be brief. This is really the only time that council approves a site plan. Usually planning commission has that authority, but because it's a planned unit development, it needs to go before you tonight, the same way our ordinances do. I'm happy to answer any questions on, the details of the development, what a planned unit development is in general. Planning commission saw this application at their February meeting, and they recommended that you indeed adopt the planned unit development with departures from the ordinance and with conditions. And those are in the packet. I hope you got to read them. I'm happy to answer any questions about those too.
Any questions or comments?
And I also want to mention that Kyle Brasser, the developer, is here too, to answer any questions if you intend to speak to the applicant.
All right, we'll start with you, Mr. Wilcoxon. You said you had lots.
Oh, no, I was asking if we could do the.
Please use your mic.
I was gonna ask if we could do the public hearing, so we can hear from the public before we ask our question.
Okay, so you have no questions for?
Not at the moment.
Okay, Mr. Ahmad, okay. Okay, any public comments? Public hearing is now open.
Council, if there is no one that would like to make comment in person, there are two individuals with their hand raised attending virtually. I'll allow the first individual with their hand raised to speak. That individual's name is John Lust, and you may address council now.
Thank you. Mr. Love.
Thank you, Your Honor, and city council members for listening to me. As you probably know, or some of you know, ours is the only private residence property that butts the proposed property to be used. We've been owners in Ypsilanti for about 33 years. We currently serve on 3 commissions, 3 boards and a couple of commissions. We're involved. And at a personal level, of course, we don't want to see this project. No surprise. We live on a quiet dead-end street and have for 33 years. But as a member of the town, it's a giveaway, it appears to us. As a matter of fact, we were talking to an adjacent township administrator who expressed amazement that the city would proceed with this project and have it yield revenue below the cost to the city for 30 years. And that seems amazing. And don't forget, when adding up the costs for this project, please also include the lost revenue for the taxes on the empty land, which uses no city services. And that should be figured in as well. You've got the schools who will lose out and they'll take a hunk of the annual city taxes cut that will occur. Also, massive apartment complexes are not what the city needs or should strive for, especially given all the negative environmental impact that this particular project will have. That's totally wooded land. There are states that require the replanting of oak trees, hardwood trees, when you take down one over a certain like 8-inch diameter. And our state doesn't seem to have that, but we're going to destroy a lot of 15 acres of really original forested land. Also, I don't see a traffic study with this. You want to tell me in the neighborhood of 300 apartments, is it going to do to that part of the city and also obviously affect the township? As a matter of fact, also, apparently the planning department never contacted the police department about this because a number of years ago, the police department requested and were granted a closure of a cut through from Green Road to Clark Road. This plan is going to reopen a cut road. It helps the police department manage the crime in that area, and they weren't even asked about it. So as of 2 days ago, when I talked to Wendy at the police department, who remembers when they had the parking lot closed that provided the cut through. So I think that ought to have a close look at it as well. And lastly, on a more personal note, we're going to be devastated. We cut down as few trees as possible. We actually took the bigger ones to the sawmill and made our molding out of it. And, we put a lot of sweat and love into our project, into our house. And what's going to happen next door will really be heartbreaking for us, as well as I think the city is selling itself short. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Love.
Council, the next individual with their hand raised is Sally Lusk. I'll allow them to speak now. You'll have 3 minutes to address council.
Sally Lusk, 1111 West Clark Road. I would like to list my concerns about this proposed development. First, I see no benefit for the city of Ypsilanti. The city would be required to come up with funds in the budget to cover the cost for services for 30 years to these residents because the developers are scheduled to receive so much tax forgiveness. The city already has one of the lowest percentages of owner-occupied dwellings in the state, having a significant portion of owners occupying and caring for their houses makes a city better. Secondly, there are better uses for this land. The acres have not been touched for likely more than 150 years, have many old trees, are reported to contain rare flora, and are likely the oldest untouched land in Washtenaw County. This is based on a survey by a world-renowned botanist around 25 or 30 years ago. And because of the great benefit of oak trees, you really ought to replace the ones that you cut. This is in terms of the environment. Further, this property would be a candidate for a purchase by a land conservancy group that would retain green space for the city. Third, the city owns the strip of land between these two parcels proposed for this development, and therefore has the power to exercise better control over the features and the benefits of any proposed development of this property. Fourth, the apartments off LaForge and Green Roads have some crime issues, such as that the Ypsilanti Police had the complex close off the only egress from Green Road to Clark Road, as my husband mentioned. And this was to prevent perpetrators from an easy escape. With this development providing new opportunity to cut through to Clark Road, policing will be much more difficult. And as John mentioned, the proposed development would have a big impact on traffic in the area. To summarize, while I have my personal reasons for not wanting to see this proposed development proceed, I do not believe it offers a benefit to the city and should not be approved. Because this proposed pilot project is paying 1/2 of the normal percentage for such projects, the city will have to come up with the funds to cover the shortfall. We already have high taxes, cannot afford to pay more taxes, and should not have to pay more taxes to make this project possible. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Sally. Appreciate it. Any others with comments? During the open hearing.
Council, the next individual with their hand raised is Yvonne Abdu. I'll allow them to speak now.
Thank you. Hello, Ms. Abdu. You can go ahead now. Is she muted?
You'll need to.
Yeah,
turn that.
am I unmuted now?
Yes, we hear you. Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you. Okay. I'd like to speak against the proposal. I'm very well aware of PUDs, the PUD. For those of you who are newer, you may not realize that that whole Walgreen property on the corner of Washington and Hewitt was developed under a PUD with extreme involvement with the 2 city council reps for our district and the residents in the neighborhood. To have that because of the proposal that Clary College was trying to do, and that would have not been beneficial for the residents nor for the city. And then they ended up pulling out of the city after all, even though they swore that they wanted this done so that they could increase their enrollment, which they were suffering from enrollment issues anyway. So the PUD can serve a useful purpose, but I am having trouble with this one and the design of it, and also that it's operating at a deficit for which the citizens, which we're already bearing severe tax involvement anyway. And so who's going to pay for this? I think this is fiscally irresponsible. And the other question I have too is I'm somewhat confused because when I opened the city webpage this evening, it has that there's 2 more public community benefits agreement meetings that are supposed to be held regarding this property on April the 6th and Thursday, April the 21st. I've been out of town for most of March. I don't understand why this is on the agenda now rather than waiting till the rest of the community and benefit stuff has been discussed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Abdu.
Council, that was the last individual with their hand raised.
All right, thank you. Any other ones here in the chamber? Okay, seeing none. Could we have the motion to
I move
close?
that the public hearing to consider an ordinance titled Lincoln Avenue Capital Management Plan Unit Development be officially closed.
All in favor?
Aye.
Public hearing is officially closed. Okay, questions? Mr. Wilcox.
Thank you. Andy, Mr. Vermont, you addressed the last question because I think I know the answer, but I'd like to have a.
The last question of the public comment?
Yeah, why this
Yes,
is- why this
well, I
is
just
coming
want to, I want to be clear too that, so today is for the planned unit development, that's a planning and zoning item. This item before you tonight should have nothing to do with tax revenues and pilots. But I do want to just explain that, yes, this project is going through the community benefits ordinance because of the incentive asked for by the applicant, which, you know, this case before you tonight should not have anything to do with taxes and the payment in lieu of taxes and community benefits ordinance process. There really was not a correct answer of what goes first, but I know that the developer is conscious about timeframes, and getting this approval now would help his development timeframes, to my understanding.
You also address, we have two options, to pass this or not to pass this, and if we also have the option to line item some of these, right? So
Correct.
There's three things that add up to the PUD on this. So if we don't pass the PUD, this can go forward regardless.
So if
As under the ordinance as it's written, without this here.
So the site plan would need to be vastly amended to include changes to the density of it and for the parking of it. If you were not to adopt this, it could still go forward as a multifamily dwelling unit site. It would just have to comply with the ordinance as the ordinance is written.
Thank you. I just want to make that clear. Some people were, thinking that this was the end of this process and that we're approving it and we'll go forward. But it's simply how it goes forward.
Correct.
Could you explain PUDs?
Yep. So the broad basis of a PUD is it's to encourage flexible developments that ask for essentially exceptions to the zoning code. Sometimes the zoning code, is not very conducive to different kinds of developments. I mean, it's a long, very exhaustive set of ordinances, is what the zoning code is. And the PUD allows the developer to ask for departures or exceptions to the ordinance. They need to prove that they're providing public benefits in exchange for that, essentially. Essentially it's a way, I know you're probably familiar with variances to an extent. It's a way to kind of bundle variances in a full sites development. So in this case, the developer asked for exceptions to the number of the room to lot area ratio. They will have more rooms to lot area than what is permitted by the ordinance. The other exception is they will be providing less parking than is what is provided by the ordinance. And they applied for a sidewalk exception. Planning Commission actually recommended that not be a departure, that they either install the sidewalk or pay the fee in lieu for sidewalks. Happy to explain any of those in further detail, but or elaborate on a PUD a little bit.
Sure. So when I look at PUDs, everything kind of compared PUDs to co-ops and condominiums in a very specific way. And all of the conversations that we've had about this development, this has been rentals. And so was hoping you could speak to how this is not that analogous to a condominium. If there are rents being charged, and that the PUD is more about the organization of the common areas and things like that.
No, in this case, the PUD is just mostly because of these site departures, these site exceptions. In this case, it's all going to be under two parcels of land. And I don't know what the ownership structure looks like now, but right now it's going to be, there's a purchase agreement, to my knowledge, by Lincoln Capital Management to own both properties right now. And it doesn't matter whether it's owner occupied or whether it's rental occupied. There's a way you can apply for a PUD with a site condominium where you are. I think that might be more what you're thinking of, where you're dividing kind of lots to specific ownerships, all under the broad site. That's going to be more what 220 North Park looks like. But in this case, that's not really the case at all. It's going to be owned. It's going to be land that is parcels of land that are owned.
Thanks. In section 122-702, it states such departures may be approved only on the condition that they will result in a higher quality of development than would be possible using conventional zoning standards. It's not clear to me how that's the case with these three exceptions, because the development as it is the statements that were made in these documents is that it's the overall nature of the development that is providing the benefits, but it's not these three specific things that's making it a better development. So
yeah, I understand that. It's, partly though, part of that is that there's specific aspects of the development that are unique to a development. In this case, the lot area calculation would create a very extremely low density development that, in our opinion, from a staff level and a planning commission level, would not be in the best interest of the city to accept such a low density development on such a large plot of land. So that was part of the recommendation for that exception. Essentially, you could create more housing in a low density zone under the cottage building type than you could in a high density zone in MD. I explained that a little bit in the staff report. I don't know if you read it. It's a little bit of an issue with our zoning, but it's something that we really, in order to allow for more housing, the developer needed to apply for that. The other departures, the parking, there is a benefit of not having huge parking lots that are overly paved, impervious surface to a over extravagant extent. So in our staff and planning commission perspective, we thought that having less parking and having parking that kind of perfectly meets the parking study is in the best interest of the city. Rather than following the code, the developer would need to provide, I think, 110, 120 more spaces, which has negative effects in itself.
So the parking study said 350 something. The ordinance as it's written said 490 something.
Yeah.
We're coming out at about 450.
You're right. Yeah, they're coming out at about 450. So they're providing less than the ordinance requires, but in our argument, there's a public benefit to providing less parking.
I like the fact that part of it is going to be impervious materials. Question about the sidewalks. You look at that site, and the sidewalk that they're asking for the variance for is along the east part of the Green Road. Looking at it on the map, none of the rest of Green Road has that sidewalk. And did those developments go through a similar variance? I mean, that's before your time to get that, but
I don't know why those were approved without sidewalks, but it would have been in the 60s. I don't know if an ordinance required it at the time. Planning Commission was very supportive of the sidewalks. They wanted either sidewalks or fee in lieu if the engineering constraints and the preservation of some of those trees provide issues. So that was certainly one of the departures that Planning Commission did not see a public benefit for.
and I understand the developer's point that we're going to make sidewalk that goes to nowhere, and people have to go back out on the street as soon as they get off that property. Anyway.
Yeah, until the next site goes through site plan approval for whatever reason, then we could eventually have a full sidewalk.
I have a lot of questions.
Oh,
Ms. Somerville.
so my only question really is about the sidewalk thing, and I actually don't think that's a good reason to omit that. So for the resolution, do I need to make a motion to take the planning commission's recommendation to accept the first two and not accept the sidewalk? Yes.
I think, so that's a good question. I think you should just, yeah, you could, I think you could explicitly say that you are following the planning commission's recommended, conditions and departures and findings. I think that would probably be the best way to do it. I thought
I'm reading the resolution.
Yeah.
I'm looking at it and I'm just like, do we need to be explicit? or-
So that's also in the development or in the PUD agreement, which is part of the approval, is these conditions as presented. So I think the resolution was saying you are approving the PUD agreement as well. So I guess by that, I don't think you need to be very explicit. I think because you're accepting the PUD agreement as presented, that PUD agreement as presented has those planning commission conditions.
Okay,
If you want to add any back in,
no, it's fine. It's just, that's not fully clear when you look at the resolution. So that's why I was like, I'm not agreeing to not requiring the sidewalk.
Yeah.
So I just want to make sure. before we
yeah, in
vote
the
on
PUD
this.
agreement, I think on the first page, it says, or the second page, it says the developer must follow the findings, departures, and conditions as stated in the February 16th action minutes of the planning commission, and those conditions are found on exhibit B attached. I think that was kind of my train of thought in writing the resolution. I don't know if Mr. Barr has any suggestions.
Okay.
Yeah, I see this, but never mind. That's why I'm like making sure that the resolution matches that doesn't, yeah. Okay.
Okay, is there Mr. Wilcoxon?
I'm kind of doing double duty here because I know that a lot of this is going to come up in the CEO. So I understand that some of these things are one thing, but I think the questions are relevant here. So there's a 50-foot easement in the ordinance or the section of the information that I have. It says that there had to be a 50 to 100-foot easement. And why was 50-foot chosen? I look at that. When I look at the site plan, I can't figure out what that slope is and how much that accommodates. And yeah, so how big is that slope?
I think, so 50 foot was the minimum requirement by the zoning ordinance. And I think they did that because they wanted, because I think the pool might encroach a little bit into that 100 foot, if I'm not mistaken.
It also says in there that there's the lighting non-compliance and that there has to be a traffic study done. What is the timeline on that?
So the traffic study, I assume, is being submitted with the Washtenaw County Road Commission's, with the permit that they are pulling with the Washtenaw County Road Commission. That might be a good question to ask the applicant.
Yep.
But there was an excerpt that was included in the packet on just the general parking dimensions.
Evening, council members, Madam Mayor.
Good evening.
I'm Kyle Brasser with Lincoln Avenue Capital, and I would love to answer any questions that you have, Councilmember Wilcox, starting with you. The traffic study that we're being required to submit is regarding the Clark Road extension. So West Clark Road currently is not paved. We are going to go through the Washtenaw County Road Commission process for applying for a permit and paving of West Clark Road. That process, the county requires traffic study. That traffic study has been commissioned. It will be submitted to the county as through normal course when we are submitting to have the road repaved. So that is where the traffic study comes into this discussion.
Just for Clark Road, it's not going to look at the increase in traffic along the Forge. And the reason I ask is because we're now looking at doing repairs to the bridge on the Forge. And if we have 300, 400 parking, we're having an extra 400 vehicles going over that regularly. What impact is that going to have? And the Forge Road is not in that great shape as it stands. So.
Sure. My understanding is that the traffic study will address the changes in traffic brought about by the apartment development. And it will examine Clark Road itself and several nearby intersections. So I don't know that it discusses trips directly on LaForge, but I would assume that you could infer from impacts on LaForge intersections, certainly Clark and LaForge, and I think Green and LaForge would be included as well, and potentially even further south when LaForge and Huron intersect. I think those are all being cited as well.
One of the statements, and I think this is for Andy, one of the statements in the under section 122.6 states that this is, there's a statement about public services on that. I don't think there's any mention to the police and fire haven't been commented on in that section. And so, the less concern that, Green Road was closed off for police reasons, but I'm also looking at, and separate from this is that the cost of those, this goes with the pilot program later on, is the cost of the services. So it states that, this is in line with the master plan for various reasons and that it doesn't impact the services, but I don't think that's an entirely complete assessment.
Well, we did not route these plans to the police department, so that is correct. We do route plans to the fire department during engineering review to get their approval so that there's accurate turning, access, trucks can connect to a hydrant, et cetera, et cetera. There are public benefits to having a road and having good circulation and more access to roads, more eyes on the street are helpful. So while I'm not the crime expert, I do think that there are public benefits to opening up circulation in the city. And I don't think it produces a very good neighborhood to have a bunch of dead ends throughout the city. That's just my recommendation. But I think it does a public benefit to have roads that connect.
There's another comment about the master plan under section 311 that benefits to the area, and I read it in line with the master plan that it brings all these benefits to the area. But looking at this and looking at the Builders Association benefit analysis, is that most of those benefits are not going to be in the city. It will be an area-wide benefit. And a lot of these people will probably go out in the north on the Forge, and the statements that this is going to bring all this benefit. I just want to point out that a lot of that benefit is not going to come to businesses within the city of Virginia. I will do that. Thanks.
Okay, Mr. Jones Chance, I saw your hand up a little bit ago, was it, or do you still have a comment?
Oh, nothing for me.
Nothing, okay. Ms. Somerville.
Yes, I just want to be very clear. So the planning commission recommended approving this PUD in their meeting on February 16th with the conditions in Exhibit B.
Correct.
Okay, and then in Exhibit B, the last line is fee in lieu of completing the sidewalk.
I think I understand the miscommunication, and if you don't mind, I'd like to try to answer the question. We applied, one of the 3 departures that we applied for was to not build the sidewalk on the southern portion of the site where we will be constructing a new green road through extension. or connection, excuse me, through from Clark Road to the existing green road that dead ends just south of the subject site. One of our goals was to preserve as much of the tree buffer and tree cover on the southern part of the site on all borders of the site as possible. And by building a sidewalk, we are most certainly going to destroy some more trees than we would have to if we did not have to build a sidewalk. So it was a request to not have to build the sidewalk. I wasn't aware that a fee in lieu was even a potential, and the planning commission's recommendation was, if you don't want to build a sidewalk, then you can commit the fee in lieu. So what you're seeing there is I believe, Andy, it's kind of one or the other. We either need to build the sidewalk that we've asked not to build to preserve tree cover, or we need to provide a fee in lieu to the city, the fee being in lieu of building the sidewalk, we have to pay to the city that fee. That's how the planning commission recommendation.
I'm sorry, I missed some of what you were
Okay.
saying. It was muffled.
Should I just start over, or was there?
Or, no, the part about the sidewalk being, okay, start over.
Okay. I wanted to explain the reason that we in the first place asked not to build the portion of the sidewalk, which was to preserve some trees on the southern portion of the site. But planning commission felt strongly that either the sidewalk needed to be built, or there's an alternative outcome, which is that the development can pay a fee to the city. Instead of building the sidewalk, it's a fee in the amount that it would cost to build that sidewalk. And I don't know where that
Pay the
fee,
city the amount that to cost.
that the cost of that portion of the sidewalk that we would not be building, that fee gets paid to the city, and then I don't know where that goes, how that gets used, but it goes into some.
It goes to a non-motorized fund, to my knowledge.
So
That was what I didn't understand.
So I believe the planning commission kind of said, we heard that you don't want to build the sidewalk. If you don't, then you need to pay a fee instead. So the agreement says we need to do one or the other. Either build a sidewalk or pay a fee to the city.
I read that as, yeah, that's my total interpretation as
Okay,
well.
so I have it pulled up, and I guess it'd be helpful for a visual, like, to see, like.
Yeah, can we?
I guess, so, I'm just kind of curious, because I'm like zooming in on this, and I feel like it's possible to keep trees and get a sidewalk.
I have
So I like, that's where I'm trying to at, I'm like, we can keep trees and have a sidewalk there, so,
I have a flash drive that contains
Okay.
plans. If it would be helpful, maybe we can just pull them.
yeah. I think that would be helpful.
Please,
Yes.
yeah.
Probably.
It's like Nichols.
Yeah, I mean, the plans are in the packet, if Andrew wants to scroll to them.
I mean, it will
Are
take
you okay to
long.
do that, Andrew?
I mean, I can, it's gonna take a while for it to load, but I can pull it up. I got it. Which one?
Just do this.
Yeah, if it's the, that'd be easier.
So can I just take a comment? Am I allowed to make a comment just while we're waiting?
So right here.
Just like generally, I think I want to make a motion to strike that because I'm not supportive of that
This one?
Yeah.
payment in exchange for not building the
Oops, I'm sorry.
sidewalk.
Yeah.
You want the sidewalk built for good, right?
Absolutely.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's within
I
your
think
power.
You can keep trees and have a sidewalk.
What about the trees have, no, the trees have roots, so it's not just like the other trees.
Yeah, I realize that, but.
So if you can scroll down like that, there's a site plan.
And the virtual
Right
people
here.
see this.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Kind of goes to the non-motorized stuff.
So these trees here are only conceptual in nature, but there's a thick tree cover on the southern portion of the site. And Andrew, how well do you know kind of where we're talking about? Could you mouse over the portion of the,
I do not know.
Okay.
Exactly what you're talking about.
can I talk in your microphone?
Sure.
And- thanks. Okay. So the portion of the site that we're talking about is, let me get the mouse here. All right. Is right here. So this is Green Road running north and it runs all the way, running north all the way to Clark. This is Green Road. And we are, the sidewalk in question is a section that runs here and then along, I believe along Green Road here on the north. So it's these trees, and again, this is not a formal landscape plan, but there's tree cover all around here. And the goal was to maintain as much tree cover. And if you build a 5, 6, or 7 foot wide sidewalk, it's going to impact a number of those trees. So that was why we had initially requested not to.
I'd be recognized for a question.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Okay. So I'm looking at on page 64 of the packet. There is some green space between the two complexes. Not the two new ones, but heading south between the new complex and the older complex. And there's some open green space there. I wonder if perhaps putting a sidewalk in along there and maybe not cutting the trees that are on the other part of the lot might be both cost effective and achieve the same aims of not putting a sidewalk in along the border. Sort of a win-win.
You're saying put a sidewalk in.
The other side of Green.
Yeah. Well, no, putting a sidewalk in on the border of the property line, but not removing the trees that are already there on the interior green space portion. I'm assuming it's wooded.
So are you asking to build a sidewalk more towards the interior of the site?
No, I mean, I'm saying to put the sidewalk where the sidewalk goes, but not remove the trees further in on the site, and that will save money on the.
Oh, I'm sorry, this green space, I'm following you
Yes,
now.
that's
I'm
right.
sorry.
I'm assuming
This is a
that's
storm,
what-
this is a storm,
correct.
this is a stormwater retention pond that's
Oh,
required for
gotcha.
stormwater, yeah.
And I just in the rendering here, I wasn't seeing.
You're not putting a sidewalk along.
Yeah, that's just for
That
caution.
means that these trees here.
Yeah, but it's gonna be, it's gotta be there, so. Let's give you a mark.
Where is Green Road closed? No.
It is closed where you see the gray stopping here. So Green Road runs where it's dashed in here currently. And it just dead ends into the woods, right as it turns north.
Yeah.
I just wanna make sure, so like, these are the trees right now, so I'm gonna go back.
Right, but these are going to be gone.
I know, I'm trying to like see the actual
Yep.
satellite view, 'cause it's like. Yeah, I know, so. Yeah. so right here, yes.
No, but that's hard.
This is Clifford.
Yeah.
She got this, that's what I remember.
Right. This right here. Oh, yeah, this one.
So you're gonna have to, this, all of this here.
Yeah.
And all.
Okay. Yeah, well, this one looking at that would be destroyed.
I just don't see that's gonna be done.
Yeah, I guess like, I'm just thinking, it might be better because someone earlier asked me about it.
Okay, can we kind of come back to? Ladies, could we kind of come back in? Were you through, Mr. Jones Chance? You were the last one speaking. I don't know. You signed it, I think you turned it in, but were you through with your comments?
I was gonna consider making a motion, but now I'm frozen, so I can't.
Right.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Walker.
Another question that maybe Andy could, address. In the comments about the master plan, there's all those things that apply to the overall view of the master plan, except for how Mike Davis Jr. Interprets that, and he came at it from sustainability. And so, you know, the parts of the master plan that address sustainability are not being complied with, according to us.
Yeah, so he had concerns about the number of trees being saved, and he wanted less parking to be required because of the thought that less parking is a public benefit. The commission as a whole did not think that that was right to ask the developer to come into less compliance with the zoning ordinance, even though they kind of understood his point. And there's, to my understanding, there's engineering challenges too with keeping certain trees, because there's going to be so much regrading to make sure that stormwater can be handled properly. So there's a little bit of a balance there. There is the sustainability plan, but there's also the master plan recommendations for housing too. That was our interpretation from a staff level, housing being very important here in the city. And planning commission voted to approve the PUD, but Commissioner Davis Jr. did have concerns.
Like, I guess I have one last question. This is for Kyle. In the CBO meetings, we're talking about the feasibility of changing different things about the plan. The ordinance as written would require this to be much lower density. And with that density, would this be economically feasible for you? And would you be able to get the financing to do this project?
The project would not be economically feasible without the added density. That's why we're asking for it. I think if you look at the departures that we requested, that's the crucial one. That's why this got pushed into a PUD. Like Andy mentioned, the density that's allowable under the MD multiple family dwelling zoning code is actually less density than under sort of the step down. And I forget what that.
Than under certain core neighborhoods.
Yeah, and so it was planning staff's opinion that the departure was justified, and that there was, and then our reason for asking it was because there was a hardship that needed to be overcome for a site that was guided for higher density. So it would not be feasible without the greater density, which is why we requested it. The other two departures, the parking one, we didn't feel it was necessary to provide the full amount of parking that the code would require. And then we did a traffic study, or a parking study to support that request. But we still have a certain number of parking stalls we need to provide adequate parking for residents. And so that's why we didn't go as low. That's why we requested what we requested for parking. And then the third one, like I mentioned, was a side. We were already in a PUD. We wanted to request a sidewalk departure. That's less of a feasibility and more of a trying to maintain tree cover request, as I explained. So sorry for the summary. I just thought I wanted to kind of wrap up that summary a little bit.
Suggestion.
Yeah, I just had a question about the topography of the site heading south. And I'm just thinking, is there a way to avoid some of the clearing and still get retention there, particularly because the trees are likely, you know, old growth and they're not really gonna fall down or anything if it gets wet. So is there sufficient grade otherwise to do that without clearing, or is it gonna have to be you know, soil gonna have to be removed in order to do that?
So I do have the civil engineers are on, or at least a representative from our civil engineers on remotely. I don't know the answer to that question. My understanding is that there is a fair amount of regrading that needs to be done to achieve the stormwater ponding that we're aiming for, which is one of the reasons that we're trying to preserve as many perimeter trees as possible, as opposed to trees. But I would welcome Jason if he's available. I'm looking for his name up there. Yep. He's got his hand raised, so he could answer that question much better than me.
Can everyone hear me? Good evening. Yeah, my name is Jason Van Ryn. I work for Nader Veld. We're the civil engineers on the project. And Kyle's correct. We have to meet the county's requirements for stormwater for this site. So that is, you know, a fairly large detention pond down in that corner that is required per the county stormwater requirements. That does require grading, and it would be difficult to do that and maintain the, you know, the existing trees. We try to limit the size of the footprint, but you know, we have to get a certain amount of volume in that basin to meet the county's requirements. So it's kind of, we try to make it as efficient as we can, but there is going to be some impact.
Thanks.
Yes.
It's related to this. One of the complaints about this site, or part of the stormwater problem with this site, is that there's runoff from across Clark Road. So clearly putting in a paved road, there's going to be storm sewers and things like that. But you know, one of the statements in here is that none of the water from this property can go on to adjacent properties. And I'm wondering if that's a county thing. How has this been going on for so long? I mean, this is more conversation with that, but also then the question is, you got these retention ponds, how is that going to be released? I know that there's delayed release and things like that, but what is the outfall going to look like into the river? When I look at the plans, there's like an outfall at the top of the grade, at the top of the cliff. And is that actually, because if you go out there now and look at the ones for the apartments, there's a gigantic PVC pipe that comes out and it goes down the embankment, like over your head, you know. So I'm just wondering how that's going to distribute.
I can let Jason answer that detail as well, but I believe that actually the eastern site, which is the senior housing site, I believe that stormwater actually is discharged into city storm, right, as opposed to the river. And then
on Green Road, right?
Yes, and then Jason would have to answer how it actually is discharged to the river from the western site.
Yep. So I think the first part of your question was regarding offsite drainage, and yeah, you cannot, you know, you're allowed to maintain existing drainage courses to a certain extent, but in this case, you know, we're maintaining all of the runoff on our site. And the purpose of the detention system is really to reduce the peak flow so that it acts like an undeveloped site would. So the site before we do the project. That's really the purpose of the detention system, is to take out that peak runoff because impervious areas, we know water runs off of it faster than you know, a green surface. So with the detention basins in place, we're going to restrict the outlet to the pre-developed condition. Now, for the multifamily section, you are correct. That stormwater system will discharge directly to the Huron River, and I mean, we haven't gotten into the details of how that connection will be made. Yeah, I think it will probably be at a lower elevation closer to the river. We don't want to create a situation where, you know, there's erosion because it is a very steep bank, but we haven't worked through all the details, I guess, on how that discharge is going to look. But the key point is, you know, we're going to restrict it so that it's not going to be this huge, you know, you know, 100-year storm coming out of that pipe. It's going to be restricted down to what the, you know, existing undeveloped site conditions would be. So I don't know if that answered your question or not, but I'm happy to
Yes,
elaborate.
I think the lower elevation discharges is the issue here. I'm trying to find it, like.
Any other questions or comments? Ms. Simmons, is your hand up?
Nope.
No, okay, all right.
Young Steve. Andrew, can you tell me what page of the packet the actual resolution's on? Just scrolling with the PDF. It's the same as well.
The resolution, I believe, is back up here at the top.
It's gonna take a while for this to load.
18.
Yeah, it's kind of hard.
15.
Okay, it seems to be, look at page 4 or 5. I believe it's not numbered. Right, it's not numbered. The page itself doesn't have a page number.
15.
On to page 3. Look at page 3. Did you find it?
Oh, yeah, I'm looking at it.
Oh,
It's on
okay.
page 15.
Yeah, it's 15.
While everyone is looking and thinking, I would like to say that I do believe that this is for staff. I do believe that this might have been best served council as a work session because of the count of the questions and the comments and the depth of it. So that's just for staff. We've taken up quite a bit of time here at the meeting, and looking around the table, it seems like we still have some questions and some indecisions going on in the minds of council people. Or maybe I'm reading the looks wrong, but that was just for staff. So thank you. Okay. Any further discussion or comments?
It seems like there's some incongruity between the agreement and ordinance and the resolution itself in the ordinance. So that's what people are trying to figure out.
Okay. Would someone want to speak those out so that we can maybe get some clarity on them?
So I guess, yeah, do you want to elaborate a little bit on this? I'm happy to help.
We got a public hearing to consider an ordinance. Now we've got an agreement for the PUD.
Yeah.
Does anyone see?
So the agreement falls within that resolution. So the resolution covers essentially all three, the ordinance, the site plan, and the agreement.
I'm not gonna move that. That's what I'm afraid of.
Would it,
I'm afraid to scroll. So look,
It's right below the resolution.
oh my God, thank you.
The next thing.
Thank you. I made it.
All right, guys.
I made it. It was really lagging.
Huge file.
It is a very big
We're all
file.
sharing the same
what
Wi-Fi.
are you looking, what are you looking for?
I'm not looking for anything now. I got it.
What were you looking for?
I was looking for the ordinance and I was like skipping pages.
Oh, that's why I said it's page 3, yeah. There's no number on it, but, yeah. Well, while everyone else is looking, I have a problem with the, not following the minimum parking. That has been, as long as I've been on council, that has been an issue with any, project that has been built. The fact that there was generally, people wanted to have less parking, but parking is essential, and I think especially when you're having housing. So the minimum, cutting the parking, that's a no for me. And Mr. James, I was.
Well, I do have a question about, so where would you, the Somerville incorporate or? Right, that's, I'm trying to figure out where this would be amended and I can't.
Yeah, that's why I was asking those questions earlier.
Yeah, I wonder if Mr. Barr or Andrew can help me here. If you want to add in a condition or strike a condition, I think you could in the resolution by adding a line. And clearly say that condition, and then Mr. Barr and Mr. Carl Barr and myself can work on presenting you the new planned unit development agreement for the second reading.
Okay.
Is that kind of how that would go?
So I'm clear on what we're considering is this with regards to the sidewalk.
Yes.
So we have the resolution which adopts the planned unit development agreement, which is our ordinance, and that ordinance adopts by reference the conditions listed in the planning commission section. The planning commission minutes are their minutes. I think that wouldn't be the best place to put it, but to add it into the ordinance itself in where it adopts the conditions in paragraph 4 of page 20 of your packet. Then I would say these conditions are found in exhibit B attached, and then go on to state what you want amended in the conditions in the planning commission minutes. Does that make sense?
Okay, so we would just re-reference the planning commission minutes and, for example, just say except section B or whatever.
Yeah, except, you know, and I might, you could put the text in as well, if that you want the sidewalk, not the payment in lieu of sidewalk. Stated that.
Yeah, I think that's what council wishes, is they want the sidewalk rather than the fee in lieu.
But I thought that's what the planning commission, that was one thing that they left out. They said they wanted the sidewalk.
Yeah, but there was an exception.
If they want the sidewalk or payment in lieu.
I didn't read that in the minutes, or maybe I
So it's
pull it from the cord and you can pull it closer.
Yeah, it's in exhibit B.
And then my other comment about the parking was just to clear up some confusion there. So there is sufficient parking. It's just that our ordinance requirement requires, because it's a bit integrated, requires excessive parking. That is parking in excess of what's actually probably needed for the site.
Haven't we also addressed this in other parts of the zoning code, and that, you know, smaller places, the amount of parking that was being required was excessive, and everybody's trying to shrink the amount of parking that's required.
Yeah, in other zones, you can apply for waivers because we want to encourage walkability and other modes of transportation. In this zone, it does not allow for such waivers, so that, well, it does allow for waivers, just not as many.
Okay,
I'd like to move to amend ordinance number 1388 to strike item 8 in exhibit B of the PUD agreement.
Support.
that's in the ordinance,
That's inside.
where,
Page 30, exhibit B. Page 30 of the packet.
page 30.
It says 12, but it's page 30 of the actual packet.
It's in the exhibit portion.
Exhibit B.
And what were you wanting to do again?
Strike item 8, which allows them to pay a fee in lieu of completing the sidewalk.
Oh, okay.
So this would require a sidewalk.
Okay. Is there a second to that motion?
There was.
All right. Any comments on the motion, discussion on the motion? The amendment.
I have a comment real quick. So the zoning ordinance does leave open, it leaves that question open-ended. It leaves, to comply with the zoning ordinance, you can either provide a sidewalk or pay a fee in lieu. So if you do want the sidewalk, you might want to be a bit more explicit and not just strike it out, but amend it to say, we do want the sidewalk. Does that make sense? I should have went over this earlier,
Yes.
but simply striking it out would
Yeah.
would not solve the issue.
Okay, thank you. That's very helpful.
Council, if I may, if you change the amendment to amend ordinance 1388 to strike item 8 of exhibit B and require a sidewalk along Green Road.
I would support that.
Okay. All right, it has been moved and seconded. Any other comments on the amendment?
Nope.
Okay. All right, seeing none. Mr. Halinga, would you please call the roll?
On the amendment, Councilmember Somerville,
Yes.
Mayor Richardson,
Yes.
Councilmember Simmons,
No.
Mr. Jones Chance.
Yes.
Councilmember Wilcoxen,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Brown,
Yes.
with 5 yes, 1 no, and 1 absence, the motion carries.
Thank you.
I have a question for.
Yes.
So if this gets a unanimous yes vote, the second reading is put into the consent agenda?
Yes, if a ordinance passes on first reading, typically it would go on consent. However, if council would prefer this just be on the agenda, and that would be fine as well, if that's council's wish.
But the question was, if there was a unanimous yes vote, then it automatically went on the consent agenda?
That's typical procedure, but it's not a written policy. So if council's will is to not do that, then that's council's will.
Any other questions? Okay. Seeing none, would you call the roll, please, Mr. Halinga?
So this is the resolution as amended.
Yes.
Mayor Richardson,
No.
Councilmember Simmons,
No.
Mr. Jones Chance.
Yes.
Councilmember Wilcoxen, Mayor Pro Tem Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Somerville,
Yes.
Councilmember Wilcoxen,
Sorry, folks. I'll say yes.
With 4 yes, 2 no, and 1 absence, the motion carries.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Martin. Thank you, Kyle. I didn't get your last name.
Kyle Brasser, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Let's,
Pick them up again.
Okay. Say what?
Let me just-
Okay. Yes.
Resolution number 2022-067, approving the minutes of the March 15th, 2022 City Council meeting. Resolved by the City Council of the City of Ypsilanti that the minutes of March 15th, 2022 be approved, and I so move.
Second. It's been moved and supported that the minutes be approved. Any questions, discussions? Okay, seeing none, would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Simmons,
Yes.
Mr. Jones Chance,
Yes.
Councilmember Wilcoxen,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Somerville,
We stepped away.
Mayor Richardson.
Yes.
With 5 yes and 2 absences, the motion carries.
Come on.
Resolution number 2022-068, approving sponsorship for a 2022 Juneteenth celebration. Be it resolved that the Ypsilanti City Council approves the request to be a sponsor of the 2022 Juneteenth celebration in the amount of $5,000. And the rest be read into the record, and I so move.
Okay, would you please read it? I think this is one that we need to look at and to discuss. And
I think we'll have some discussion.
I know that council, beginning to like to read things into the record, but people do go back. And there are people on virtually that need to know what's in the resolution, please. Unless it's extremely long, let's take time to read it.
Only because I have a beautiful speaking voice. Resolved by the Council of the City of Ypsilanti, whereas the City of Ypsilanti adopted a special events policy, and pursuant to that policy, the city may co-sponsor an event that is of general interest to the public and advances the city's public image. And whereas this year, the second annual Juneteenth celebration will take place Friday, June 17th through Sunday, June 19th at the Ypsilanti Freight House and the South Adams parking lot. And whereas the second annual Juneteenth celebrations event organizer is requesting that the city be a co-sponsor of the 2022 series of events. And whereas City Council agrees that becoming a co-sponsor of the 2022 Juneteenth celebration would be in the general interest of the public and advance the city's public image. Now therefore be it resolved that the Ypsilanti City Council approves the request to be a sponsor of the 2022 Juneteenth celebration in the amount of $5,000.
Okay.
And I so move.
Would you leave that blank until we have time to discuss it?
I think my understanding was that something be inserted in the blank and then we'll discuss it and it can be amended.
Okay, usually it's.
That's correct.
Okay, usually it's left blank until we discuss it, but we'll accept that. Okay, is there it's been moved and second, and is there discussion? Comments? Yes. Yes, Mr. Jones Chance.
If there's a presentation or folks from the event, I would defer to them, I suppose.
Okay, there is a presentation. Okay. Ms. Duckworth, do you have something for us?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
Okay, if I could have a screen sharing capability.
You should be able to share your screen now.
Okay, thank you. Alrighty, so thank you all so much for the opportunity to present somewhat of our plans for the second annual Juneteenth, Ypsilanti Juneteenth celebration, weekend actually this year. First of all, we would like to thank Mayor Richardson and City Council for allowing last year's Black Lives Matter street mural and the Juneteenth celebration. We appreciate coming together with the city and the community for both events. The intention of the celebration, of course, we know that Ypsilanti City Council did move to observe Juneteenth as a legal holiday. And as an effort to be in collaboration with that grand, I would say, observance, we would like to continue and have this Juneteenth celebration as the mission being to uplift Black-owned businesses, our youth, our seniors, sororities and fraternities, artistry, and our local churches and the greater community as a whole. Some of our objectives for the event, again, to uplift the legacy of Black people within the community, to uplift and honor our ancestors and their journey, to create a moment for community bonding and togetherness, which is extremely important for us, especially in these times that we've been in, and to uplift Black-owned businesses and nonprofits working towards racial equity. Also to encourage the continued work ahead as we continue to work towards racial equity, or what we like to call Black liberation. And these are just a few pictures from last year's celebration. We were excited to have the support of City Council and the Mayor, also the fraternities that were a part. And this year we're excited to have more of an intentional input from those organizations as well. Here are some more pictures that depict that moment of community bonding. It was beautiful to see, even through the rain, individuals did stay just to have that moment to celebrate Juneteenth and to just be together with one another. This year, we are planning a dance jubilee on Friday, the 17th. Saturday will be the festival, as we had last year. And in addition, this year, because Juneteenth is on a Sunday, we are planning a worship experience at 1:30 p.m. and then a gospel concert at 4 p.m. This year also, we are excited to have Black men read and our community reads, who will do a phenomenal, intentional kids corner so that we can involve our youth and uplift them in their own area. Again, this year, we are looking to have our reparations grants available to the business, Black-owned businesses that participate. And as you see depicted, those are 3 winners from last year. We have about 26 vendors signed up already. We have volunteers signing up. As an addition, this year, we are adding a gospel choir. And we have about 10, 11 people signed up for that as well. So we're really excited about that. The elements of African dance that will be there, and also the sorority and fraternity highlight, because that is a huge part of our heritage that a lot of people really just don't understand. And we want to really pay homage to the great work that are done by sororities and fraternities and make sure that the community understands the great contribution that they offer. Community partners include Women and Men Working for Change, Puffer Reds, Ipsy Marketing and Print Company, Black Men Read, The Print Giants, Our Community Reads, Survivors Speak, Value Black Lives. And we also have support from Big Brothers and Big Sisters, who were planning an event that day, but they actually decided to reschedule their event so that they could be a part of Juneteenth for the entire day. And here is a budget of the proposed amounts that we would need to do the celebration. And there are some things that, as far as the speakers, that they may volunteer their time, but we wanted to allot this in the budget so that we would have that if in fact we need it. So I think that is it. Again, I want to thank you all for the opportunity to present.
Thank you, Ms. Duckworth. Appreciate that. Council, any comments? Ms. Somerville? I didn't hear you.
I have one comment, but I'll wait until everyone else is done.
Okay.
Also, I guess I'll go. No one else wants to go. I see like at the end, the amount, and I guess my only comment is, I checked with our our finance director 2 weeks ago, and we still have $24,000 remaining in our social equity fund from the last fiscal year. So I think this event would fit the purpose of what that fund was designed to do. So I guess if we waive this fee in the total that's listed, we could take it out of that fund.
You said if we waive the fees?
So yeah, to sponsor this and waive the fee associated with it, I'm just suggesting that we take it out of our social equity fund. We have $24,000 remaining.
Any questions or comments? Mr. Jim Shan.
Yeah, I mean, I guess some of these are sort of in kind. And so I'm not really comfortable using the social equity fund money for that. I think there are some pretty acute issues concerning violence and health and safety that are possibly a better fit for the social equity fund money. But on that point, I'm actually looking at this and wondering maybe if some of this can be reduced. You know, the police officer spending and maybe one of the street closures. What's the benefit of Ferris being closed? What's the plan, I guess, for Ferris?
Is that a question for me?
Anyone, yeah.
Okay, so with Ferris being closed, that part would be in fact for the cars of the vendors, the U-Haul truck and things of that nature, which were parked inside of the event space last year. And we are just looking to have that extra space to be able to house those vehicles. And then of course, the Washington closure is for, South Washington closure is for the Kids Corner area.
For which corner area?
Kids Corner. So in the Kids Corner, they will have interactive games, there'll be story time, different things of this nature that we were looking to put them in their own individual spacing so they would be able to operate freely and not have so much of the loud area by the stage.
Okay, thank you. For the Kids Corner, okay.
My other question is the number of police officers per street closure. Is this, was this a recommendation from staff? This quantity, it just seems a lot, just considering the percentage of our total police office that 4 police officers represents. I think it's maybe 15% of our entire staff, so.
This is standard practice for any street closure.
I see, okay.
So did she say that was a requirement?
No, she said it was a standard practice.
Any other questions or comments?
I guess I do have a comment and question for Mr. Jones.
Okay. Go ahead, Ms. She has a question for you, Mr. Jones-Chan.
So normally when we sponsor events, we recoup the money from the social equity fund. We did last year on at least one occasion for Jazz Fest. So I'm just kind of curious if this time we're, I guess like for like labor and stuff, are you saying that we just like?
Well,
my only thing is that I think there are just higher and better uses for the social equity fund money that may be more directly related to the purpose of that. And there are some acute issues in our Black communities in particular around violence and things like that, that I think are better uses of the funds.
Okay, well, we used 10,000 last year for Jazz Fest, so that's why I'm asking.
Well, sure, and that's just maybe, but this year, what I'm saying is there are some issues that are acute related to violence, health and safety that would be where I feel that this money would be better spent, regardless of how we spent it last year.
And I agree with him. There's some things that that are needed. And we will be bringing them to council shortly. But I have no opposition to council waiving the fees for this. And I do believe that if we're going to be co-sponsors, that we should be listed on all of the advertisement, all of the flyers, whatever goes out, that that we should be listed as a co-sponsor. And as I said, I'm in favor of us waiving the fees. And I think if we waive the fees, I think it gives us pretty much what we would give out of the social equity. But I would prefer to see the social equity fund go for something else this year. So there is something that is pressing in the Black community. I'm sorry, I didn't see your hand. Thank you.
I'm just interested in knowing what those priorities that you guys may have for dealing with the crime. And I'm asking only because the county they're accepting applications right now for their priority funding from ARPA funds that they have. And so one of the areas is crime prevention. And so we are putting in a couple applications. They are due Thursday. So I would like you guys to share with me because they have like 77 million there.
Oh, yeah.
We can certainly
I'd be happy to sit and chat about that.
Yes, we can certainly share them with you, but
I'm
right
just
now,
saying,
no,
yeah,
we
you
can
have to
share-
share with me now, but the applications
Right.
are due
We
on
can-
Thursday.
okay, we can set a time and meet with you on tomorrow to share those. Can you carve out some time, Mr. Jones?
Well,
No.
yeah.
You can just,
Okay.
or you can
No,
just.
we'll carve out some time. No, this is important enough. We'll carve out some time. Okay, thank you. So I would like to ask if there, Mr. Jones Shane.
I do have a question probably for staff is, if we also were to waive the security deposit, I mean, based on how the event went last year, do you think that there would be any liability for the city if we waive that as well?
I don't think there's any liability, but honestly, I'm not even sure why I include it, but
Okay.
I just do because that's part of the fee estimate.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I'd be down for waiving the fees and the security deposit.
Sorry.
Oh, that's all.
Do you want me to make a motion?
I just want to point out that Anthony has his hand raised.
Anthony, Mr. Morgan.
Good evening, council. Good evening, Mayor. I just wanted to ask, a question concerning Juneteenth. Is Juneteenth considered a national holiday and a local holiday?
Mr. Morgan, last year, the city voted to make Juneteenth a local holiday, and we actually did it a few days or a week before the national holiday was declared. So yes, it is a local holiday.
I would, and I saw the expenses for the holiday, and I'd like to thank Trish and everyone involved in creating such a wonderful weekend. I do think I would like to stick around closely to a standard amount of what we would give any group according to the holidays that we celebrate, whether it was Pride Week or whether it was Women's History Month or whatever we would celebrate. If there was around $5,000, because I know there was another about the jazz series. It had a large bill that we didn't choose to accept. And I don't know about the funding source, whether it's the social equity fund or whatnot, but I'm comfortable with paying at least half of it unless we had to go find the money. But to waive the fees, I would support the will of council, but I would stay around $5,000 to be consistent.
Thank you, Mr. Morgan. One of the other things that I would like to see is I would like to see a council appointed member of the committee. We are not prepared at this time to appoint that person, but within the next few days, we would hopefully have someone that we could appoint. I don't know how the rest of council feels about that, but Ms. Simmons.
Oh, I'm not sure. Could you clarify the role? Because that's, I don't know that we've done that before for other ones. That was really, I guess, but how would that work? Or what would the role be?
As a co-sponsor of the event, that we would just appoint someone to be on the committee.
Oh,
Okay, and if there's a council person that would like to volunteer, that has time, yes, but if not, we would select a resident that would be interested. If the rest of the council agrees with that.
We have the ability to do that? I mean, if this is, I'm trying to figure that out because if this is a private organization, how do we insert ourselves into the organization? Is it because we're sponsored? That seems more a contractual arrangement rather than the government for their organization. I guess that's a question for Mr. Barr.
It does sound like a quid pro quo. which I think would be
All right, let's move on.
Well, I say that I did try to speak with a couple of other council members, Mr. Wilcoxon, that agreed with me. That's why I'm bringing it up. I agree with them. So, yeah, okay. Mr. Halanga.
If council is going to determine someone to sit on this committee, it would need to be done so in an open meeting. So if it's not done tonight, then it would have to be done on April 19th.
Okay, that's fine. Is there anyone here tonight that on council or staff?
Good.
I don't believe you could tie bar the fee reduction with request for appointment. If council so decides on the fee reduction, the event organizers may, independent from that, make an offer, but they can't be tie barred.
I have a question, just for like general conversation. Would it make more sense to see if we can put like a staff person in the space?
If we could do what?
Communications director. Would it make sense if we can just try to have a staff person work in, stay in communication with them? Rather, because I don't think anybody on council has the capacity. So I'm thinking maybe if, we have one staff person be responsible for staying in communication with the committee, or I don't know if this is a formal committee. I don't think it's a formal committee. I know that Trishay mostly plans this. So I guess, Trishay, could you maybe share how this all works behind the scenes?
Sure. So this year we wanted to be more intentional about involvement from different partners. And so we've been meeting since February, and that would include Wendy, that would include Chris Jacobs, it would include Miss Francis.
Wendy and Chris, perfect.
Yeah.
I already signed in on one too. Okay, yeah, that sounds good to me. I
see all these hands go up. Mr. Jones Chan.
Yes, just a little math. So if we were to take this $8,462 for the event grand total here and the city fees, and we were to, I'm guessing we're just waiving the actual fees.
Right. Yeah.
And the deposit, that would put us at $3,720. The resolution was for 5,000, so there would be a little extra to go towards however they want to spend it. Does that make sense? I move to call the question.
Wait, you're saying, please explain, no, please explain that again.
A motion, the council member had the floor and he made a motion to call the question. Is there a second?
I seconded it.
Okay.
It's been moved and second to call the question.
Councilmember Simmons,
Yes.
Mr. Jones Chance.
Yes.
Councilmember Wilcoxen,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Somerville,
Yes.
Mayor Richardson.
No.
Motion carries with 5 yes, 1 no, and 1 absence. On the resolution, Mr. Jones Chance,
Yes.
Councilmember Wilcoxen,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Somerville,
Yes.
Mayor Richardson,
Yes.
Councilmember Simmons.
Yes.
Motion carries with 6 yes, 1 absence.
Mr. Wilcox,
I'd like to make a motion to extend the meeting to 11 o'clock.
Midnight.
is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and second to extend the meeting to 7 o'clock. All in favor?
7 o'clock in the morning.
I just wanted to make sure everybody was paying attention. I guess you are, to 11 o'clock. All in favor? Aye. Okay, the meeting is extended to 11 o'clock and hopefully we'll get past it. Okay, so that the resolution has been passed and we are on to resolution 2022-69, and I believe you have that, Mr. Wilcox.
I do have that. Really? Oh, man. Resolved by the council of the city of Ypsilanti that an ordinance entitled an ordinance to amend chapter 1 general provisions of this Ypsilanti City Code by amending section 114 enforcement authority for the code to include planning and development department personnel and to amend chapter 17 inspection and control of certain buildings to allow for 3-year certificates in certain circumstances and calculate how the certificates are issued, and to amend chapter 71 administrative hearing bureau section 71-2 definitions to add a definition for authorized local official for the purpose of allowing planning and development department personnel to issue blight violations be approved on second and final reading. Support. I didn't move it.
I so move. There you go.
So you, okay, wait.
I didn't move it because
You're not
in
moving.
parliamentary procedures, I can't vote against something that I move.
Oh, okay.
That's not accurate. You can put something.
I wrote that in your notes.
No, you can put something on the table and vote no on it if you like.
I made the motion, but it's open for a second.
Okay, we need a second.
Second, support, got it. I was the only one that voted no, so I think you were.
No, but I've never known that, Mr. Wilcox.
I went through some documents that I had and I found that in the parliament procedure because I was trying to give those to somebody else. I'm like, oh, hey, look at that.
All right, it's been moved and second, and this is the second reading. Is there any questions, discussions? If not, seeing none, Mr. Halinga, would you call the roll, please?
I thought there was gonna talk.
Yeah.
I've already talked about it, but I can talk again.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know.
No, it's a second reading, so if anyone has any questions, I'm here to answer. I have a couple things, but Steve, if you have any questions, you weren't here last time.
I wasn't here last.
You were not.
All right. that answers that question. All right. So this seems a little weird to me, the part where the personnel changes and we allow people that aren't being trained to enforce ordinances. And the way this is worded where, basically everybody that works for the city could be a code enforcement officer.
So that,
We have the fire chief, we have.
yes, No, so the only thing that's being added is planning department personnel, and the reason for that is right now, the person who issues a citation for planning department tickets, actual planning and historic district commission are not the people who actually are the subject matter experts in those fields.
Say that again.
So the people writing the tickets for historic district commission violations and planning violations are not the subject matter experts in the field. So right now, it is the building department manager who's retiring.
And so you want to broaden this, I mean, because when I read it, it seemed like, you know, the fire chief could go and be doing inspections for.
The fire chief currently has the ability to write any ticket on behalf of the city. That's not changing.
Really?
Yes. So that whole list, the only thing with that list is adding planning department personnel. And the only reason for that change is because our building department manager is retiring, and it's better to have the people who actually interpret the code every day issue the citation. So when they go to court, right now, our building department manager testifies from the file, which means he goes through the file and testifies on what the file says. The only reason that's an issue is meeting dates and times change and everything like that. And so basically any court action that comes for historic district commission or planning ends up getting delayed about 3 months based on just timing of how it goes. And so by having the city planner or the city preservation planner issue citations, that would allow for consistency, it would allow for easier use so the people who are in court don't have to come back multiple times. And allow the subject matter expert in that field to issue the citation.
I have a question. So this is not just for the historic district planner.
No.
And so what staff does this entail?
So it's any staff that the city manager determines is necessary to in the planning department to issue citations. Because the city manager has the ultimate authority in who can issue citations.
So you would come to me before issuing a citation? No.
We will come to you before somebody would be deputized to issue a citation.
So at this point, it can be any staff member.
Right now, it's any building department staff. Currently, without this ordinance change.
No, I'm saying with this.
With this, it could be any staff member that the city manager deems as any staff member in the planning department who is a subject matter expert. Well, that's why the city manager actually has the role of the city. Like she is the one that actually gets to determine who a ordinance officer is.
Mr. Jones Chance.
Oh, is there any? So yeah, I mean, it seems like the city manager will be choosing from a small pool of people inside of the department who know planning and know the ordinance to issue citations related to the ordinance. Another important thing to consider here, thinking about whether or not to support this here on the second read, is the allowance for 3-year certificates of occupancy in certain circumstances, which would maybe go a small way to alleviating some of the affordability issues by allowing compliant landlords to save a little bit of money and hopefully pass those on, but also more importantly would give the city more, city staff more time and energy to focus on folks who are non-compliant and improve the safety and well-being of the tenants in the city who reside in some of these buildings. So it's another important change, I think, here.
The only reason for the request for planning department officials to issue citations is right now, it all is handled by one person who issues every citation in the city, essentially. And it's too much work for one person. And with that person leaving, he is the only person who actually understands how to do it. And so by actually spreading out the work to more people, not to issue more citations, because essentially we write about 4 citations for the Historic District Commission and maybe 2. And I'm just in thinking about it. One of the issues with this citation was the weird shed that was dropped off on 810 Harriet that was never permitted or allowed. One of the citations, another one is we have a liquor store in Ward 1 that actually the site is just trashed. And right now it's a code enforcement issue, but honestly, they're violating their site plan, which would be another thing that they can go off. So we can go off the trash site and the site plan violation. And then I did have another one, I should work without a permit in historic home, is one of the big ones, but we have about 4 of those a year. And looking at all of the data over the last 3 years, we have issued no citations to homeowner occupied homesteaded residents. They're all landlord or commercial building owners who are not pulling permits for their work. Yes.
Ms. Simmons, I'm sorry, Senator.
That's okay. But we're opening this up to allow more people to issue citations, which could lead to us issuing more.
I would come back to you in a year with, when we do our annual reports. And if there is an increase in citations, which I do not see there being, we could revisit this then. But I will tell you that with the retirements, because we have 2 building department officials retiring in the next 2 months, and really spreading out the work and actually having more people do more people do the work of these 2 people, we can actually get more things done. We can make sure our rental housing units are better kept instead of having a building department manager. Is there any other questions for me? I understand it's kind of confusing, and we're not looking to grab power by any means. It's just so when one person retires, we don't have to scramble at the last minute, which is really hard for us to do right now. This Frank's been issuing planning and historic district citations for the last 20 years. And so hopefully we can actually get people trained to do it before he does retire.
Are you planning on training the whole department?
No, just the staff members that in the consultation with the city manager. My guess is there'll be 1, maybe 2. If the city manager feels that they are worthy of actually issuing citations.
So they would pretty much be filling the gap before the hiring had taken place.
Well, so my goal for and Francis and I have had many conversations about this. My goal for the building department is to train somebody within and actually build up our employees that we have. Right now, because 2 out of the 3 inspectors we have are retiring in the next 2 months, there's not really the clear person to actually elevate to the manager position. So my guess is over the next year, train these people on how to be inspectors and then pick a manager from there. But we could actually get 3 people inspecting every day instead of 2.5. So that's the goal. So not losing anybody, but really getting somebody who I don't want to hire somebody from outside of IPSI to tell IPSI how IPSI should be run. We have a really good one of our best former police officer who's one of our code enforcement officers who's going to be elevated very soon, and it'll finally bring some diversity to our building department. So it's very exciting.
So this is adding responsibility to personnel that's in
Planning department.
another department.
Yes.
So are we gonna compensate them?
At this point, it would be part of their day-to-day job. And they're aware of that.
So we're adding on responsibilities to an employee without compensating.
We are going to we're going to allow them to actually be the enforcer of the ordinance that they oversee, which will allow them to be more efficient at their job.
It's my understanding, doesn't planning staff sometimes direct code enforcement?
Oh.
To go,
So when there's here's why it's a weird, thank you, city manager. What happens is the preservation planner sees an issue. They go to the building department manager, tell him, I need you to write a ticket based on this. He goes and writes the ticket based on this, and this. And then when it goes to court, Frank will go tell them this. The judge has more questions. They have to adjourn the case to then come back to bring the preservation planner down here in order to actually say what this means and how that works. And so that's where essentially the only reason why The only reason it works is because it's been done that way for so long, but essentially, everything we do, there's a middleman. And I want to remove that middleman, actually saves the city time, it saves staff time, so they're not asking Frank what's going on with this case. They're actually, they know what's just going on with the case. Yes.
Mr. Jones.
Yeah, so in essence, we are creating less work for the planning department.
Correct.
Sounds good to me.
Thank you.
Ms. Somerville.
I moved to call questions.
Support.
The question's been called, supported. All in favor, call the roll, please.
Who is the support on that?
I was. That's Brian Jones' chance.
Councilmember Wilcoxen,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Somerville.
No.
This is on call the question that you just
Sorry.
mentioned.
You called the question. I know, I'm sorry.
It was her motion. Now, Mr. Wilcox, that's when you jump.
So that's yes then?
Yeah.
Okay. Councilmember Simmons,
Yes.
Mr. Jones Chance,
Yes.
Mayor Richardson.
Yes.
Motion carries with 6 yes and 1 absence. On the resolution, Mayor Pro Tem Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Somerville,
No.
Mayor Richardson,
No.
Councilmember Simmons,
Yes.
Mr. Jones Chance,
Yes.
Councilmember Wilcoxen.
Yes.
Motion carries with 4 yes, 2 no, and 1 absence.
Hey, thank you. Mr. Wilcoxen, I believe you have the next also, 2022-048A, approving appointments of non-residents to boards and commissions.
Back to that.
Resolved by the council of the city of Ypsilanti that the following non-residents be appointed to the city of Ypsilanti boards and commissions as indicated below. Joseph Ricci and Melissa Gillette to the YDDA. And I so move.
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Ms. Somerville.
Yeah, I just want to share similar comments that I did last time. I nominated both of these individuals. Melissa, the reason that I nominated her, she represents a part of our DBA business that's not currently represented on the board, which is beauty salon, hair salons and barber shops. And also Joseph Ritchie would also represent part of Depot Town that's currently, I guess, there's one person on the board currently. So for the reappointment, but he would be another representative from Depot Town.
Thank you. Any other comments? Mr. Jones Chance.
Yeah, I mean, we only just lost one in Depot Town. So my concern really is about residency, and I said this last time. It's about residency in light of the reappointments that are also on the list. I think and just having personal experience with all of the DDA members up for reappointment, I can say that I would be for all of those reappointments, and so that's where my concern is, that we're continually staffing more non-residents on the authority. So I think, I can think of other business owners that we could choose. I mean, Valerie Brown would be an excellent member. Andy Hinton is another one. They're both on Washington, right next to each other, and they're both downtown. Lynette Lau is right across the street. So there are a lot of choices. I don't know if, and we discussed this a little bit last time. I know it's a little bit difficult finding people, but it's not impossible. And there are going to be also more reappointments coming up. Folks who, in my opinion, are important to the DDA, having, again, had experience with them. And we're going to get to a point where there are no city residents on the DDA, and I don't think that's an appropriate for an authority. If this were, a board or a commission, that's sort of a different thing. But authorities have unique powers and they have unique abilities to spend. And so I think it's important that the city minds its own shop.
Okay, Somerville.
Yeah, I guess, I would just like to point out that the Downtown Development Authority serves a specific purpose, and the businesses in the 3 areas of the DDA pay into that. And I think that's in the one time where they do actually get representation when they're not residents. So I don't really see, it's not really the same as our other boards and commissions. This is specific to businesses and business owners, and that's what they're paying into.
Mr. Jones Chance.
Well, to follow that logic, I would say if that were the case and that's good, then wouldn't it also be better if they were both residents and paying into the tax base as businesses in the area? And I think the answer to that is obviously yes. And I'm just asking that we consider that for these, for the future vacancies, given that we have so many reappointments that live outside of the city, and I don't think that's asking a whole lot.
I'd like to call the question.
Is there support?
Support.
It's been moved and second to call the question. Mr. Halinga, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Somerville,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Simmons,
Yes.
Mr. Jones Chance.
No.
This is on call the question.
Yes. Thank you.
Councilmember Wilcoxen,
Yeah.
Mayor Richardson.
Yes.
Motion carries with 6 yes, 1 absence. On the resolution, Mayor Richardson,
On the resolution, yes.
Councilmember Simmons,
Yes.
Mr. Jones Chance,
No.
Councilmember Wilcoxen,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Somerville.
Yes.
Motion carries with 5 yes, 1 no, and 1 absence.
Thank you. Hey, Mr. Wilcoxen, moving right along with you, resolution 2022-070, approving appointments to boards and commissions.
Resolved by the council of the city of Ypsilanti that the following residents be appointed to the city of Ypsilanti boards and commissions as indicated below. Lakeisha Williams to the Housing Commission, and I so move.
Support. It's been moved and supported. Any discussion? Mr. Jones.
I just want to apologize again for missing her application. I ran into Lakeisha last week and just let her know what was going on. She was very excited. And I'm excited that someone who actually lives in the housing is going to be on the commission. I think this is great.
Thank you. Any other comments? Being none, would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Simmons,
Yes.
Mr. Jones Chance,
Yes.
Councilmember Wilcoxen,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Somerville,
Yes.
Mayor Richardson.
Yes.
Motion carries with 6 yes, 1 absence.
Hey, Mr. Wilcoxen, 2022-071.
Resolved by the council of the city of Ypsilanti that the following non-residents be appointed to the city of Ypsilanti boards, commissions as indicated below. Paula Jerome Ashland, I say that correctly? YDDA, Kaya Hinton, YDDA, and Andy Friendship, YDDA, and I so move.
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Any questions or discussion? Mr. Jones Chance.
Yeah, like I said before, I've had personal experience working with all of these folks and I definitely support them.
Thank you. Any other comments? Hey, seeing down, would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Wilcoxen,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Somerville,
Yes.
Mayor Richardson,
Yes.
Councilmember Simmons,
Yes.
Mr. Jones Chance.
Yes.
Motion carries with 6 yes, 1 absence.
Mr. Wilcoxon, I believe you have one more, you done?
I'm done. I skipped the 7.
Okay, Ms. Somerville, do you have 2022-72? Okay, thank you. Approving contract number 22-55107 with the Michigan Department of Transportation for sidewalk construction in connection with the Highway N17 construction. Is there anyone to speak, present on this?
Oh, I think she's got to make the motion.
Oh. Sure, resolution number 2022-072, and let the rest be read into the record, so moved.
Support.
Ron is actually able to speak on this just as well as I am, if not better. But it is a fairly straightforward agreement. MDOT will be building a sidewalk along Washtenaw, just west of Anna Street, connecting Anna to Don's Donuts, a local landmark. And this is an agreement for maintenance. Any questions? Ron, did I miss anything?
This reverts to the landowner, right?
Yes.
For shoveling, things like that, which is kind of a moot point because they have plowed in and nobody's gonna pick it up. It's fine.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, did you have anything else? Ms. Weston?
I do not.
All right, thank you. Okay, seeing no more, any other questions or comments, please call the roll.
Mayor Pro Tem Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Somerville,
Yes.
Mayor Richardson,
Yes.
Councilmember Simmons,
Yes.
Mr. Jones Chance,
Yes.
Councilmember Wilcoxon.
Yes.
Motion carries with 6 yes and 1 absence.
Okay, some of I believe you have this one also. Resolution 22-073.
Resolution number 2022-073, whereas sponsored and programmed by the Michigan Department of Transportation for improvements to Washtenaw Ave, Hamilton Street, Huron Street, and Michigan Avenue, including a road diet and a non-motorized cross of I-94 at Huron Street, and let the rest be read into the record. So moved.
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Any questions or comments or presentation? Okay. Seeing none, would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Somerville,
Yes.
Mayor Richardson,
Yes.
Councilmember Simmons,
Yes.
Mr. Jones Chance,
Yes.
Councilmember Wilcoxon,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Brown.
Yes.
Motion carries with 6 yes, 1 absence.
All right, thank you. And Ms. Somerville, do you have another? You have, okay, then you have the next one. Mayor Pro Tem, Resolution 2022-074.
All right. Resolved by the Council of the City of Ypsilanti, whereas the city strongly supports safe, non-motorized transportation and safe access to recreation opportunities for people of all abilities and incomes. And whereas the need for a safe crossing of I-94 here on Street for pedestrians and bicyclists as part of the city's non-motorized network is incorporated in the city's master plan, non-motorized plan, and 5-year approved Parks and Recreation master plan. And whereas the area proposed for the new infrastructure currently lacks adequate street lighting for pedestrians and bicyclists. And whereas it is necessary to enter into a contract with DTE for the implementation of the project. Now therefore be it resolved that the City of Ypsilanti City Council approves the attached contract with DTE for option 2, metal poles on the east side. That the mayor and clerk are authorized to sign this contract, subject to approval by the city attorney, and any change orders may be approved by the city manager to facilitate completion of this work, and I so move.
Support. It's been moved and supported. Any questions, comments? Oh, we got Ms. Westler, thank you.
So I do hate to be a negative Nelly. It does look like the supporting documentation for this particular resolution didn't actually make it into the packet, which is unfortunate because it was a masterpiece of engineering drawings, which I'm sure enthrall everybody. In
This could have been
brief,
longer.
I'm sorry,
This could have been longer.
this could have been longer. So right now, what you would be looking at would be a lovely photometric design showing several Cobra lights along the west side of Huron Street between Harriet and I-94, with the brightest one being immediately adjacent to the bridge. The Ipsy Township is pursuing their own agreement with DTE south of the 94 bridge along Huron. This agreement also includes similar metal Cobras on the east side, so along our Huron Street side, between Kramer and I-94. So I believe that is a total of 4 lights on the east side, 2 of which are adapting existing structures and 2 of which would be new poles. And I do not remember the number of lights on the west side, unfortunately. I do rely on my beautiful photometrics for such things. But they are pretty darn similar to what we see on Washtenaw, actually, as far as aesthetics. And I apologize for not actually noticing this sooner. This is 100% on me.
Why is it we have to go through DTE?
Because our streetlights are owned and operated by DTE, we pay them a flat rate per pole per year. In return for which they come out and change the lights, they upgrade them to LED, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There's many nooks and crannies of this agreement, which I would be happy to refer you to Director Akers to discuss at length.
Okay. I think it sounds like it looks great.
Let me actually see if I can pull up. Yeah, they're all in here. I'm sorry, Andrew.
I allowed you to share your screen. So you can,
Why would you do that?
just in case you wanted to.
Oh, gosh. So much responsibility. Okay. That's what I do. All right. I'm not gonna let you see the disaster that is my desktop.
While she's looking for that, does anyone have any other questions or comments?
At some point, can we take like a 10-minute break?
What was that question?
At some point, can we take a 5 to 10 minute break?
Okay, sure. Well,
I had some of the pictures.
are you close to finding it?
Not right now, it's on. Right, we're not ready.
It's very unusual.
This doesn't make sense. That doesn't make any sense.
So up on the screen,
Here we are.
perhaps, you can see an approximate, let's see if I can zoom out just a little bit here. So here we have the southeast corner of River and Cross. This is a similar height and appearance, generally speaking, to the light that will be closest to the bridge. The lights that will be elsewhere will be most similar to the lights that we have on Washtenaw currently. They're going to be a little bit dimmer. They're 138 watt LEDs. The large fellow is going to be upwards of 200 watt LEDs. So very bright. It does cast a bright light on the bridge. And then here we actually have the existing LED pole on an existing wooden pole at Kramer. And so that's going to get a little bit of an upgrade, but it still will be a LED arm on a wood pole. And then let's see if I can find this beautiful, beautiful photometric. Feast your eyes upon it.
Wow.
Thank you, Councilmember Wilcoxon.
Meeting tonight.
Yeah.
You've been down, it's over here.
I just like lights.
Yeah. So This is the intersection with Harriet Street. These bright red dots are proposed locations. See these blobs surrounding them are the various lighting levels as you get further away from the lights. So they are casting light onto the roadway as well as to the path. It's obviously very clear. Thank you, Councilmember Simmons, for humoring me. No.
Hold it, Ms. Westwood, please, council people, please. Let's not be rude.
Oh, I wasn't trying to do that. Sorry.
I understand that not everybody takes as much joy in lighting.
I would if it was earlier in the evening.
But here we have perhaps the most important light, the light that is adjacent to the roadway. It is also going to be the tallest and the brightest light in order to cast that light on the bridge itself. Due to the technical limitations of placing lights on the bridge, mainly the vibration of the vehicles as they pass over the bridge, as winds go through, it is not a good location to place electronic equipment. So that is why we are pursuing this alternate. And you can see also here the locations of the township lights. They're proposing, there they have roadway that is one rather than a divided roadway. And so they have them in alternating positions on either side of the road. So I can go into much deeper detail if anybody's interested in that.
You're good, right, Steve?
I never thought about the lights on the bridge, but of course you couldn't put lights on the bridge.
I mean, it can be done. It's usually done at the point where you're designing the bridge. It is significantly more difficult to retrofit. So for instance, we actually have lights on the Grove Road Bridge. But they were installed at that bridge's inception and so on and so forth.
And I do believe that it's very important to have lights for the pedestrian on the bridge and the bike. So I think it's very important.
It's awesome.
Is it possible?
Plus, it says a lot for people driving into the city to see those lights. Mr. Wilcoxon.
Just wondering if you could put directed spots on those, so like you've got a light that's right there, but then like out in the middle of the.
So these are actually placed to be directed slightly. So you'll see here, this teeny tiny little dark dot is the actual location of the light. And they are able to do some slight modifications to the LED head so that it will actually cast the light where you want to.
Okay.
You don't really want a spot per se, because that is too directed. You also want to light some of the surrounding area without also casting glare into the neighbors. So they've walked a very fine line here for us, and we're appreciative.
That's because they're the experts, right?
They are the experts.
Awesome. Can I pose a question?
Sure.
Okay, Ms. Whistler, are you done?
I am satisfied so long as council.
Okay, thank you. The chair will entertain a motion to call the question.
I didn't know support anything.
A council member has to have the floor in order to call a question, but if council is ready to just vote on this, we can just go ahead and vote on it. Right. Mayor Richardson,
Yes.
Councilmember Simmons,
Yes.
Mr. Jones Chance.
Yes.
Councilmember Wilcoxon,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Somerville.
Yes.
Motion carries with 6 yes, 1 absence.
And we will take a 7-minute or 10-minute, 5-minute.
She ordered food, she wants food on the. Take this right.
The food's not here.
No.
Oh, you were asking for a break, so I thought, okay. All right. Who has resolution 2022-075?
I do. All right.
Resolved by the council of the city of Ypsilanti, whereas the reconstruction of Huron River Drive, Cornell to La Forge, is programmed for construction year 2023 in the current 3-year TID. And whereas the design engineering services will be expended from account number 20279077975000 and the rest of the grants to record. Some more.
It's been moved and supported.
I did roll.
Brian? Are there any questions? Ms. Westler is still at the podium. What do you have for us, please? Thank you.
This is a more traditional presentation. So we have before us tonight a design engineering proposal for the reconstruction of Huron River Drive from Cornell to La Forge inclusive. This also includes a slight modification to a prior proposal for the feasibility phase. This is because they have done some pretty significant work for us in determining the right of way and the legal boundaries of the roadway. It's not a traditional platted road. It does go through several interesting areas and is adjacent to a railroad. They have also committed to continue work on the Transportation Alternatives Program grant application that council graciously authorized at an earlier meeting this year. So this is, as a design goes, very similar to what was proposed back in March. It is a road diet with an additional sidewalk along the north side, connections to adjoining areas, and I await your decision.
Any questions or comments or?
I'm not as excited about that sidewalk as I am about the one by Dom's, but I am excited about it because I do run.
I am pleased to hear that.
Okay, seeing no questions or comments, Mr. Halinga, would you call the roll?
Councilmember Simmons,
Yes.
Mr. Jones Chance,
Yes.
Councilmember Wilcoxen,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Somerville,
Yes.
Mayor Richardson,
Yes.
with 6 yes and 1 absence, the motion carries.
All right, thank you. Resolution 2022-076.
I got that one. Resolution number 2022-076, resolved by the council of the city of Ypsilanti, whereas, may the rest be read into the record. I assume, I'm kidding. Whereas the city of Ypsilanti and the charter township of Ypsilanti have a jurisdictional boundary in the Huron Street I-94 intersection, and both have responsibilities for road maintenance on the non-motorized pathway, and whereas the city and township have discussed the most effective ways to handle snow removal and grass cutting in the area, and whereas an intergovernmental agreement has been drafted between municipalities to identify the responsibilities of parties within this area. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the city of Ypsilanti City Council approves the intergovernmental agreement for the I-94 pedestrian overpass maintenance, and that the mayor and city clerk are authorized to sign this contract subject to approval by the city attorney. I so move.
It's been moved and supported. Any questions or comments? Okay. Any discussion? I see none. Would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Simmons,
Yes.
Mr. Jones Chance,
Yes.
Councilmember Wilcoxen,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Somerville,
Yes.
Mayor Richardson,
Yes.
motion carries with 6 yes, 1 absence.
Thank you. Resolution 2022-077.
That's me too. Resolution number 2022-077, resolved by the council of the city of Ypsilanti, whereas the city of Ypsilanti is awarded a $50,000 grant from the state to make improvements to the softball field at Cartridge Park. And whereas it is necessary for the city to enter into an agreement with the Michigan Economic Development Corporation, MEDC, to accept the grant, and now therefore be it resolved that the city of Ypsilanti City Council approves a grant agreement with the MEDC, and that the mayor and city clerk are authorized to sign this contract subject to approval by the city attorney. I so move.
It's been moved and supported.
I'm right here.
Any discussions or questions? I do. City manager, could you tell us a little bit, please, about this grant? Or is there someone from staff that could?
It's Ron.
Ron, oh, okay, thank you.
Good evening, council.
Good evening.
So, excuse me. So due to the efforts of Senator Irwin's office and several local residents out of that community, the city of Ypsilanti was able to obtain a $50,000 Michigan enhancement grant to make improvements to the softball field at Park Ridge Park. Upon approval, staff will solicit someone to help put together a spec for the improvements to the softball field, and we will put together an RFP and get it bidded out so we can complete the work this summer. We're also going to make sure that we work with the city residents who were involved in moving the project forward to make sure it's completed within the timeframes and the goals of the project are met. That's essentially the summary of what it was, and I'm happy to answer questions.
So, could you give me a little bit of details about the improvements that are going to be made to the park?
There were specific items listed in the grant. There were some fencing repairs, putting coverings on the dugout, doing some sweetening the gravel, putting in some more gravel, new bases, benches. We're going to be looking at, depending on how the costs come in, we're going to be looking at potentially installing some netting to make sure that the softballs cannot reach the playground equipment that's over in Park Ridge Park. So we're going to be looking at doing a large, essentially a significant makeover of the softball diamond over at Park Ridge.
I don't know if you're aware or not, but there's been rugby practice over there. Is that going to hinder improvements in either way? I mean, will it still work together?
Yeah, so my understanding is the rugby club has been in communication with our special events coordinator, Wendy Esty. So, as we kind of get closer, because there's going to be another construction project this year in Park Ridge Park as far as doing a accessible ramp from the community center down to the track. So we'll be making sure that those construction timelines and schedules are communicated so that way, there won't be any conflicts.
Okay, very good, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Ms. Somerville.
Yeah, I just wanted to take this time to give a shout out to Brian Foley, who brought this project forward. He was a huge part in how this became an awarded enhancement grant for the city.
Great, thank you. And kudos to Mr. Foley and appreciation for the work that he does throughout the city. Appreciate that. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? And thanks to Senator Irwin following through. And could we have a thank you letter to go to both Mr. Foley and to Senator Irwin's office, please? If staff could do that, thank you. Okay, seeing no other hands raised, would you call the roll, please, Mr. Helene?
Mr. Jones Chance.
Yes.
Councilmember Wilcoxen.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Brown.
Yes.
Councilmember Somerville.
Yes.
Mayor Richardson.
Yes.
Councilmember Simmons.
Yes.
Motion carries with 6 yes, 1 absence.
Thank you. And resolution 2022-078.
That's me again.
Thank you.
Resolution number 2022-078, resolved by the Council of the City of Ypsilanti, whereas the City of Ypsilanti has been awarded recycling of organics infrastructure grant for the purchase of recycling carts for eligible properties in the city, and whereas the Michigan Department of Environment, Great Lakes, and Energy has provided an agreement for the city to accept the grant, and whereas the grant will allow the city to purchase recycling carts, furthering the city's goal to increase the volume of recycling within the community. Now therefore be it resolved that the city of Ypsilanti authorizes the mayor and the city clerk to sign the recycling organics infrastructure grant agreement subject to review by the city attorney. I support.
It's been moved and supported. Any questions? And Mr. Akers, did you have something for us on this?
Yes, thank you. I can give a brief overview. So the city had been awarded the Eagle Recycling and Organics Infrastructure Grant to purchase 96-gallon recycling cards for all households which are eligible to participate in our curbside recycling program. So currently our 1 to 4 unit properties. The amount of the grant is $252,870, and the funding is intended to cover 80% of the purchase price of recycling carts. To cover the other 20%, the city has applied for a grant with an organization called the Recycling Partnership, and has actually been awarded another $80,000 grant to cover that 20%. And also some additional funds to do education and outreach and mailing regarding the transition for the to the cart. So we've been very fortunate with regards to that. Based on that, the only projected cost to the city for this project will be about $5,000 that we're anticipating to help support some of the education and outreach components, but we've had some pretty good success working with them. Due to the added storage capacity of the larger carts, we're going from a 25-gallon smaller bin to a 96-gallon cart. We have been taking a look at our recycling programs and looking at ways to incorporate some additional multifamily units into our program without significantly increasing costs. We have some ideas. We're going to be coming back before council and doing a presentation at a future council meeting. And so we will have more information about that time, or at that time, excuse me. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Ms. Simmons.
I just want to say, this is really great. Thank you. When I think like, oh, wow, we can always do more, and we do. I guess I just want to say we should, give ourselves some kudos too. Compared to other communities, even in the state and other states I've been to, who really do relatively little recycling. I guess I'm just really proud of our city efforts and that we continue striving to, do better and get better with recycling. So I'm excited about this, and thanks for the work on these efforts. It's exciting. So.
All right, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Wilcoxen,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Somerville,
Yes.
Mayor Richardson,
Yes.
Councilmember Simmons,
Yes.
Mr. Jones Chance.
Yes.
With 6 yes and 1 absence, the motion carries.
Thank you. 2022-79.
Resolved by the Council of the City of Ypsilanti, whereas the Community and Economic Development Department seeks to provide executive director and administrative services to the Ypsilanti DDA, and whereas the Ypsilanti DDA seeks to enter into an administrative services contract for the services of the Community and Economic Development Department, and whereas the City of Ypsilanti approves of the use of city staff for a 24-month contract for services to the Ypsilanti DDA with compensation, and now therefore be it resolved that the Ypsilanti City Council directs the mayor and city clerk to enter in an administrative services contract for 24 months for the Community and Economic Development Department to be employed by the Ypsilanti DDA as executive director and administrative services, and I send it.
It's been moved and supported. Any discussion? I'm sorry, we have a presentation.
Not so much a presentation. We've presented this now. This is the third time that the contract is recommending to be extended. The main differences in this contract from previous contracts are there's a 2.5% annual increase put into the contract, as well as the DDA, if Christopher, God forbid, left, the DDA would like to have a role in the hiring process, which we had no problem with, because when we hired Christopher, the DDA had a role in that process. So they just wanted to make sure it was in the contract if something were to ever happen. But the agreement has actually gone very well. I believe you made the motion at the DDA board, Mayor. We've actually gotten way more grants because of the collaboration between the city and the DDA. And we've also gotten a lot of collaboration. And I feel like Mayor and for the people who haven't been here, who were here before, the city and the DDA work together, there was always a lot of friction and a lot of tension. And by having the two offices be one, we've really eliminated most of that. And there's always going to be a few little squabbles, but for the most part, I think it works really well. So if anyone has any questions.
Mr. Jones-Smith.
Yeah, I mean, I had an issue with the cost of living increase, and I wonder if, you know, the DDA would be willing to bump that up, maybe to like 3.5%. I mean, just given that we know that cost of living is rising at least twice as fast as that right now.
I would say, and Mayor, you might be able to speak to that, I think the DDA would be amenable. They just put in a number to make sure that it was starting to increase.
I do believe they would be amenable.
So you could easily amend this contract. Anyway, it is yours to do. And I think that the DDA is getting a really good deal, but the city is also getting a pretty good deal because we actually have the collaboration between the departments.
Yeah, I would make a motion to amend the contract to provide a 3.5% increase annually for the purpose of providing cost of living adjustments.
Support? Was that a support from you? Okay, it's been moved and supported to amend this resolution to include a 3.5% increase, cost of living increase. Would you call the roll, please, Mr. Owen?
On the amendment, Mayor Pro Tem Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Somerville,
Yes.
Mayor Richardson,
Yes.
Councilmember Simmons,
Yes.
Mr. Jones Chance,
Yes.
Councilmember Wilcoxen.
Yes.
Motion carries with 6 yes, 1 absence.
Thank you. Any further discussion or comments on the resolution as presented? And seeing none, would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Somerville,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Simmons,
Yes.
Mr. Jones Chance,
Yes.
Councilmember Wilcoxen,
Yes.
Mayor Richardson.
Yes.
Motion carries with 6 yes, 1 absence.
Thank you. 2022-080.
Resolution number 2022-080, resolved by the council of the city of Ypsilanti, whereas the city of Ypsilanti City Council adopted a social equity policy in 2019 to promote equity to negatively impacted communities by advocacy around criminal justice issues related to marijuana prohibition, and whereas the city of Ypsilanti has already joined a partnership with the Washington County Prosecutor's Office, Expungement Unit, and whereas the Great Lakes Expungement Network wishes to join this partnership, and let the rest be read into the record. So moved.
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Any questions or comments? Discussion, Ms. Somerville.
Yes, Councilmember Wilcoxen and I brought this forward. There's a new recreational cannabis facility opening up on Washtenaw. As part of their grand opening, they are partnering with the Great Lakes Expungement Network to host an expungement fair free of cost to people who are participating in that, and reached out to us to see if we would like to partner. And I talked with Councilmember Wilcoxen. We already have a partnership with the Washington County Prosecutor's Office. They've agreed, and Councilmember Wilcoxen has spoken with our police chief about waiving fees for fingerprinting for this specific event. So this would allow us to both partner and sorry. Okay, fees will be waived for April 15th through May 7th, just for that event. It can't be for anything else, sorry. I was like, I think it says it, but, okay.
Okay, could you explain that a little bit more?
Sure.
What just happened?
So Mr. Barr was asking a question about the fees that would be waived. The fees would be waived for this event for fingerprinting by the police department.
Oh, for the fingerprint.
For the fingerprinting associated with the process.
Okay, thank you.
I lost my spot, so I think I'm just gonna stop and say that I hope you will all support this because this is a really good program that is being thrown together. And it will help us, allow the prosecutor's office to take what they're doing even further, which we've already agreed to join them in.
Thank you. Any questions or comments?
I think this will,
Yeah.
comment. Somebody else did. When I talked to Chief Juicy, we talked about the logistics of this and the idea is to have the fingerprinting and all that done. So when they show up on May 1st for the event, and get everything that they need, and they can submit the paperwork like that. Because of staffing issues, we talked about having it as a like a fair thing in the department, but just having it be over a period of time that people can trickle in and get their stuff. There will be some people that won't show up ahead of time, so having it open for a week after the event to pick up those people as well. The Great Lakes Expungement Network is also looking for the city to have other events coming in the future, so this is for this event, but they're proposing another event later in the summer. And so we'll probably bring in a motion to the board at that time.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments? I see now. Mr. Halinga, would you call the roll, please?
Mayor Richardson,
Yes.
Councilmember Simmons,
Yes.
Mr. Jones Chance,
Yes.
Councilmember Wilcoxen,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Somerville,
Yes.
6 yes and 1 absence, the motion carries.
All right, thank you. And 2022-081
Council, before moving forward, we need to amend the agenda to add that resolution based off the closed session. If we could just put it right after this current one.
Would you put it right after 81? Please, thank you. Okay,
82 is the adjournment.
2022-81.
It is listed as 83. It's
It is, it's, yeah.
Oh, you too?
Oh, you get it.
Yep.
Let's all read it.
Let's read it together.
Are the 281s out there?
No, there's 81 and this is 83. So we all have them. Yeah. Okay.
82 is missing?
No, 82 is adjournment. I have that.
Oh.
All right.
So I'll just let it rip.
There is an 82?
There
It's
is.
Or the
adjournment.
one, yeah,
Run it.
okay.
I'm gonna run through both. I'll do them. No problem. All right. Resolved by the council of the city of Ypsilanti, whereas the city of Ypsilanti Fire Department HVAC unit has been approved for replacement. Whereas the fire department is asking for authorization to award this contract to Accurate Comfort Systems Incorporated. Whereas this project should not exceed $35,000 with any change orders to be approved by the city manager. Now therefore be it resolved that the Ypsilanti City Council approves Accurate Comfort Systems Incorporated to complete the removal and replacement of the fire department's HVAC unit. And I
Support.
All right.
Okay, is Chief Hobbs here to talk to us?
He's on this one.
Yes, I am.
Yes, good evening.
How you guys doing?
Good, how are you?
I'm good. This is kind of ties into the larger building maintenance projects. It ties into the Park Ridge Community Center, the issues they're having with the HVAC unit, also City Halls. Our unit's been there since 1974. It's not economical. It's not efficient. We've had multiple problems with it. We've had problems with it leaking. And I would like to award this contract to Accurate Comfort Systems for all the reasons listed above. Obviously, they do the maintenance and servicing and installation cities HVAC systems. It wouldn't make any sense to go outside and seek, someone else to award this contract to. And I think Ron would second that.
All right, thank you. Any other questions, comments? I see none. Mr. Malinga, would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Simmons,
Yes.
Mr. Jones Chance,
Yes.
Councilmember Wilcoxen,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Somerville,
Yes.
Mayor Richardson.
Yes,
Motion carries with 6 yes and 1 absence.
thank you. All right, Mr. Wilcoxen, would you read the resolution? It would be 2022. Wait, is there an 82? Because this is.
Yes, there is an 82.
No, this is 83. This is
83, correct.
numbered 83.
All right.
Okay, 2022-83. 083.
Resolution to approve settlement State of Michigan and City of Ypsilanti versus Delta Town of Delta, Theta Xi, Chapter Washington Circuit Court File number 22-000032-CH. It is resolved by the Council of the City of Ypsilanti that whereas the City of Ypsilanti joined the Washtenaw County Prosecuting Attorney in a suit against the Delta Town of Delta Theta Chapter 11, or Xi. Anyway, chapter fraternity to abate a nuisance, and whereas the defendant fraternity has agreed to the relief requested and stipulates that a judgment be entered as shown on the attached city attorney memo. Now therefore, the stipulation for judgment is approved and the city manager is authorized to sign for and on behalf of the city of Ypsilanti, and I so move. Support.
Any discussion, not questions?
During closed session, council was informed not to discuss this.
All right, thank you. Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Wilcoxen,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Somerville,
Yes.
Mayor Richardson,
Yes,
Councilmember Simmons,
Yes.
Mr. Jones Chance.
Yeah.
Motion carries with 6 yes, 1 absence.
thank you. Board and commission nominations. Bicentennial Committee appointments, applications. We have something on that for us, Mr. Belinda.
There were 7 applications submitted. They were nominated by council members Somerville and Simmons. The applications were included in the packet.
Thank you. Ms. Somerville, I saw your hand up.
Oh, I don't, and if anyone has any questions, I haven't answered them, but at our last meeting, we discussed that Jennifer and Brian and I would review the applications. We got 7 total. And that's what it requires for the commission form. So we've nominated all 7, and then there's still room for the committee to grow if needed.
Ms. Simmons.
I just want to say I'm excited about the 7 here. They're really great people with some diverse backgrounds, and I think they're going to really do a great job.
Okay, thank you.
So this was created by resolution or ordinance?
Right. So are we voting on these, Mr. Belinda?
If council wishes to,
Or
it
is
can,
this for- or
but
a vote for next week, next meeting?
that's up to council. If the council wants to move forward with these tonight, or they can be on the next meeting for approval.
Ms. Somerville, I see you.
I would prefer that we actually approve these tonight so that the committee can actually form and get started officially.
Move to approve.
Thank you, support.
It's been moved to approve and to and support it to accept the applications. Any discussion, any questions, comments? Okay, seeing none, would you call the roll, please?
Mayor Pro Tem Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Somerville,
Yes.
Mayor Richardson,
Yes.
Councilmember Simmons,
Yes.
Mr. Jones Chance.
Yes.
Councilmember Wilcoxen,
Yes.
motion carries with 6 yes and 1 absence.
All right, thank you. The Historic District Commission, this was added to the agenda. We have James Huffman, 1109 Westmoreland Street, and Delray Burge, 101 Washington Road. These will be, applications were submitted. We will vote on these at the next meeting. Will be presented. Okay, do we have any communications from boards and commissions? Okay, seeing a liaison report. Police Advisory Commission, is Mr. Morgan still with us?
Yes, Councilmember Morgan is still on the meeting.
Okay, he is the liaison for the police advisory. Does he have anything for us, Mr. Morgan?
If he did send me the let's see here. He sent me his comments for this, the YPAC meeting update for March 24th, or the submission and approval of the annual report. Felt that would be beneficial in submitting a full and complete annual report from the chair before new appointments occur. And then that's for that, and that annual report will be as a communication on the next agenda.
All right, thank you. Our next Human Relations Commission.
The April meeting has not happened yet.
All right, thank you. Arts Commission.
Nothing to report.
Thank you. Parks and Recreation Commission.
Oh, sorry, that's me. We're getting rid of this. Looks like the senior center annual review has been approved. That was presented by Evan, who was on the board but is no longer on the board. Still looking at trying to construct a Huron River Day. There has been some interest support that through different means. There's some money available that could work with the Huron River Watershed Council that is had been organizing that. That's a difficult thing to do these days. There used to be a canoe livery, but none of the liveries in Ann Arbor are willing to do that anymore. So we're still trying to figure out how we're going to facilitate that. But I'll have updates on that at another time.
Okay, thank you. Sustainability Commission.
I'll have to give an update on that as well. I was traveling during that meeting. So.
Thank you. Historic District Commission.
Nothing to report.
Planning Commission.
Yeah, pretty much everything that happened at the meeting, we've already voted on here tonight, except for there was a temporary use being allowed for a patient station, which was allowing them to have sort of this circle drive curbside system going on, and the planning commission did not renew that temporary use, and so it's done. Not that it matters much with the construction going on, but that's my update from the last meeting.
All right, thank you. Zoning Board of Appeals.
Pretty sure.
All right, thank you. Liaison reports. Simco. Last week was the General Assembly, and there was the election of officers and also election of those that the county and the different unit representatives for the executive board. And I was once again elected to the executive board representing of Washtenaw County, so. Washtenaw Area Transportation Study.
Yes, we had our first in-person meeting since COVID began last month, and I think just the one maybe update, I don't think it's been mentioned here, is that Representative Peterson, I guess he's put together a group of stakeholders to look at potential for improving portions of Washtenaw Avenue east of Carpenter. I'm not sure how far down east, but anyway, there's hope that maybe MDOT will get funding to do a preliminary environmental work for those improvements.
Okay, thank you. Urban County, I was not able to attend the last meeting. Joe is not in here. I don't know if he attended or not. Ypsilanti Downtown Development Authority. I don't see Mr. Jacobs here. And the last meeting I was not able to attend due to the MML conference. So Friends of Rutherford Pool.
Pool is moving forward with looking for staff for this summer. This is at the point where they start recruiting staff. Since we have a new HR director, connected the board president with the HR director to facilitate that. There's some construction going on the east side of the pool to refurbish. There's shape structures there, and so construction on that has already started. So that involves tearing out the old and putting a new one. So that's about it.
All right, council proposed business. Ms. Simmons, I'll start with you.
Nothing urgent, nothing urgent today.
Nothing, okay. Mayor Pro Tem,
Yeah, nothing urgent.
Ms. Somerville.
Yes, just two things. I'm hosting a park cleanup at Prospect Park on Saturday, April 23rd from 11 to 3. And at some point soon, I hope we'll have a bench for Prospect Park that is in memory of Pete Murdoch and Grace Sweeney, and I'll let everybody know when we have that. And oh, there's another cleanup day in May for Frog Island and Riverside Park, and the weekend is escaping me. I believe it's the 21st of May. So mark your calendars. Yeah, that's all.
Thank you. Mr. Wilcox.
No particular business, but two comments. Last year, I offered to take people out and canoes on the Comet, Huron River, upstream and downstream of the dam. Mr. Jones Chance took me up on that, and so I'm reiterating that offer. So if people want to see what the dam looks like now and what it could look like afterwards, I'm happy to do that. I also want to say that, I had the pleasure of attending the MML conference with the mayor and the city manager, and want to encourage other council members to attend. I went to the conference last fall, and I went to the CapCon, spent some time with Representative Peterson's staff and with Senator Irwin and his chief of staff. And it was very productive and very, I learned a lot doing that. So I would encourage other people to take advantage of that.
Yes, I also would encourage others to participate. Okay. Mr. Jones, are those walking tours on the dam?
No, those are boat tours.
Those are boat tours.
Well, I'll do a walking tour.
Oh, no, I didn't know. I
Jesus over
was
here.
asking. Okay. I said, what was that?
It says Jesus over here.
It's safer walking, you said?
No, it's fine.
Okay. All right, Mr. Jones Chance.
Nothing here.
Nothing today? Yeah.
I forgot, I volunteer at the Historical Museum, and I'll be there this Sunday from 2 to 5, if anyone would like a tour from me. So if you haven't been in the museum. It's not bad.
Okay, very good. Communications from the mayor. Just one, I'll just say, present one thing tonight for the sake of time. I've been approached a couple of times by different people in the community asking for a sign or plaque or something to acknowledge Colonel Kettles and his lifetime here in the city of Ypsilanti. I think Andrew helped me remember he died a couple of years ago, but he was I think he was possibly 100 or 101 when he passed. And Annie, I'm sure there's some information on him in the museum. So if you could, if for the next meeting, if you could bring us something, some more information and share with us, please.
There's a gleanings issue with that and when he visited President Obama. I also think there's a plaque outside of the museum. I'll take pictures and send it to everyone.
Okay, thank you. The people that were asking that it be put on Huron Street headed into town. For those coming off of 94 as they enter, they will see a sign.
You can see it, like, you mean like a sign that you can see?
A sign or, just a little metal plaque or, I think that would be, we'd have to decide on what that was, but that there would be some recognition of him having lived here in the city. So, okay, that's all I have. Communications from the city manager.
Hopefully everyone read the CIL, if you got any questions, just.
Okay, thank you. Any other communications? April 12th, 22, work session discuss parks and recreation. So I'm believing that is, that's next Tuesday. Will that be a 7 o'clock work session?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Okay, and that brings us to public comments for 3 minutes. Mr. Rajavi.
Reza Rajavi, 110 North Summit. All places of business have a bike rack. This is a place of business. I'm a bike rider. I don't have a car. The question is, why don't you have a bike rack for me? For me. I'm looking around and I see that your heating panels has rust on it. If I had that rust on anywhere in my rental properties, the inspection would not pass. All right. Mr. Myers keeps talking about my water heater does not have a shut-off valve. I welcome every single one of you. Come to my property anytime that you want, any one of you except him. Except him. I did not put a new shut-off valve on the, you are not blind. You can see whether the shut-off valve was there 30 years ago or it was there last night. That is what his conclusion is. And that is why they don't give me my certificate of occupancy. The inspector came and inspected and he did 2 things wrong. Number one, he did not park his car when he was supposed to. And also he went ahead and inspected the water heater without my presence, which is a no-no. It is a no-no. And when I complained, we got into an argument. I wrote a letter to Mr. Barr and Mr. Barr contacted him. And when the inspector came back, he didn't come for re-inspection. He came for vengeance. He came for vengeance. I kept telling him, that is the shut-off valve. Open your, and I told you, Mr. Myers, he's senile. He is a senile. I'm gonna get it on the record too. As you have a senile inspector. There is the shut-off valve, look at it. I'm done with you. I have so many other houses to inspect. I'm leaving. That's what he did. You were not there to see what he was doing. Mr. Myers has a tendency to support his step at any cost, at my cost. People, if the police officer wants to come into your property, they have to have a warrant from the court. What kind of jurisdiction does your city inspectors have to come into my living space? The second floor is my rental property, not the first floor. You have no right to send your inspectors into my living space to tell me, oh, your ceiling needs paint. None of your goddamn business that the ceiling in my living space, which has nothing to do with safety and health of the tenants, nothing to do with that. Or the globe in your bedroom should be put back on. How is that a safety and health hazard for the tenants? My tenants don't live on the first floor. I live there. I live on the first floor. You see, I'm shaking because I'm angry with you. I'm angry with you because you're imposing. You think I'm going to be able to sleep tonight? This matter has to come to a head. It has to come to a head, one way or the other. We're going to see if it is going to be a positive way.
I will call for the adjournment. Meeting adjourned.
Oh, thank you. Pizza's here.
So that.
If anybody wants dinner, I ordered pizza. Thank you, that's so nice.